Chapter 103. Genius 1, Second Remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Yu smiled in return. After exchanging some pleasantries, he entered the hall and took a seat. After casually chatting for a while, Yin-Yi brought up the main topic and said solemnly, Shueching is the youngest daughter of my elder brother. Her aptitude is the most outstanding amongst the younger generation, and she can be said to be the future hope of my Yun family. Fellow Taoist Qin saved her from danger and even helped her during her pill tribulation. Our Yun family owes him a debt of gratitude. The Yun family has prepared some gifts. I hope fellow Taoist Qin will not refuse. As he spoke, he clapped his hands. A Yun family disciple walked out and presented the storage bag with both hands. Yu waved his hand. I am friends with Miss Shueching, so it is natural for me to save her. I only came as a guest at a friend's house, so please take back your gift. Young Lady Shueching, why are you calling me that so intimately? That damned bastard. Could it be that you are really after me? Fang Huahua was so angry that his teeth ached. He couldn't help but grit his teeth. Don't tell me you don't like it and want something else. Yun-Yi and the others were embarrassed, but Fang Huahua's status was special, so it wasn't good for them to say anything. They could only pretend not to hear him. They coughed and said, Is there anything fellow Taoist Qin needs? As long as the Yin family can do it, we will definitely do our best. Qin hesitated for a moment. He cupped his hands together and said, I do indeed have a matter. Fang Huahua laughed coldly. What he meant was, as expected. Yun-Yi reached out a hand. Fellow Taoist Qin, please speak. Qin said, I heard that not too long ago, an ice attribute spiritual object appeared in Snowfall City. I'm a bit interested in this. I wonder if your mansion has any news about it. The main hall suddenly quieted down, and the atmosphere was strange. Yin-Yi's complexion darkened. His voice was cold. Fellow Taoist Qin's request, forgive me, but our Yin family cannot comply. Qin frowned. He didn't know why, but the Yin family's attitude had suddenly changed. Seeing his confused expression, Fang Huahua's lips curled up slightly. He thought to himself, Put on an act. I'll tear it off for you. Qin, I really admire you a bit. Your lion's mouth is just too big. You've only saved my cousin once. Do you think you could take away the Yin family's treasures just because of that? Qin instantly understood where the problem was. Yin Shueching had an awkward expression. Fellow Taoist Qin, that ice attribute treasure belongs to my Yun family. Qin bitterly smiled. To run into someone else's home and ask about their treasure, it was no wonder that the Yun family had such ugly expressions. Anyone else would have done the same. He clasped his hands and spoke seriously. My apologies, I was too rash. I just came to the Driftsnow City and didn't know about all these. Yin nodded, so it's like that. Since I can't provide any information, please accept my gift. Right now, in the Driftsnow City, who didn't know that the ice attribute treasure was in the hands of the Yun clan? If not, why would they activate all the formations in the Yun clan? He naturally didn't believe it. Qin was silent. Fang Huahua thought he was feeling awkward, and he couldn't help but reveal a smug expression. With today's matter, this brat's threat was now useless. Yin Shueching didn't believe that Qin was someone who wanted to repay her kindness or seek a chance to obtain the Yun family's treasures. She spoke up to help him out of this predicament. Fellow Taoist Qin has always lived in seclusion in the mountains, so it's normal that you don't know about the outside world. Qin looked up. I don't want a gift, but since the ice attribute spiritual object is in the Yun family, I wonder if I can make a transaction with you. Fang Huahua's eyes widened. How could this fellow's skin be so thick? Even though his thoughts had been seen through, he still openly stated his intentions. A transaction? Wasn't it because he wanted the ice attribute spiritual object? Yun-Yi said in a low voice, Fellow Taoist Qin, please show some respect. The other Yin family masters all had gloomy complexions. Qin said, I know that my actions are too rude, but this treasure is extremely important to me. If the Yin family is willing to sell it, I am willing to pay a great price. Fang Huahua strangely smiled. A great price? Fellow Taoist Qin is a wandering cultivator. so you might not know the background of my great family. Forgive me for being rude, but I really can't think of anything that fellow Taoist Qin can offer that could move the Yun family. Qin Yu lifted a finger. 1,000,000 spirit stones. The hall fell deathly silent once more. Even the arrogant Fong Huahua was left dumbfounded, his face blank. 1,000,000 spirit stones, no matter who it was a massive amount of wealth. The Yun family might be able to take out such a sum, but they would absolutely have to sell off all their assets. Gulp? It was unknown who gulped, but it was incomparably grating. He regained his composure, but his eyes were still absent-minded. Fellow Taoist Qin, this joke isn't funny at all. Qin Yu lightly said, if the Yun family agrees, then I will bring spirit stones to visit you within a month. With this, no one thought he was joking anymore. The eyes of the several Yun family masters flashed with a burning heat. They never imagined that this ordinary-looking cultivator would actually have such astonishing wealth. 1,000,000 spirit stones. This was enough to tempt a nascent soul old monster to take action. If they could keep him here, the atmosphere in the hall became increasingly heavy. Qin Yu seemed to not feel anything, his expression calm. Suddenly, a calm voice echoed in from outside. No matter how many spirit stones it is, the Yun family will not sell the Isa tribute treasure. A middle-aged cultivator stepped forwards. As his eyes opened and closed, they were filled with dignity and dignity. This aura, hollow nascent soul realm. Yun Shiweqing hurriedly stood up. Father. She hesitated. Love go little say, Net Chu Yun Fan lifted a hand. Fellow Taoist Qin saved my daughter, and I am deeply grateful for that. Besides the Isa tribute treasure, you may ask for anything else. As long as I can do it, I will not refuse. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He now understood why the Yun family had such a firm attitude. This Isa tribute spiritual object was likely something the Yun family patriarch had prepared to help him break into nascent soul. Compared to a nascent soul cultivator, even 1,000,000 spirit stones was nothing. He stood up and cupped his hands together. If that's the case, then I will disturb you. Farewell. Yun Fan bowed in return. My words are still valid. If fellow Taoist Qin ever changes his mind, then feel free to speak. Someone, send fellow Taoist Qin out of the mansion. Qin Yu strode away. Yun Shiweqing stood up to chase after him. Yun Fan shouted out, Stop! Father! Yun Fan frowned. Sit down. Yun Shiweqing's eyes turned red. She didn't dare to disobey, and sat down. Yun Yi and the others bowed. Greetings, Patriarch. Fong Huahua had a smug expression. Uncle, I was the one who discovered this person's wild ambitions first. Yun Fan nodded and sat down in the seat of honor. A manager hesitated. He said, Patriarch, if Qin Yu dares to offer 1,000,000 spirit stones, then he must be rich. Why let him leave so easily? Sensing Yun Shiweqing's angry gaze, he awkwardly coughed. Moreover, he first had evil thoughts towards my Yun family's treasure. Yun Fan frowned. There is no need to mention this again. In the end, Qin Yu saved Shiweqing. The Yun family will not repay kindness with enmity. Moreover, do you really think he could take out 1,000,000 spirit stones? Yun shouted out, Patriarch, are you saying that he is probing us? The other managers were suddenly enlightened. They felt as if they had been played. They clenched their teeth. 1,000,000 spirit stones, just what sort of wealth is that? Even a nascent soul cultivator might not be able to take out such a sum, much less a cultivator who lives in seclusion in the wilderness. Our minds were shaken for a moment, and we weren't able to respond. We allowed this person to see a joke. How hateful. That must be it. Fong Huohuo relaxed. So this brat was just pretending to be a wolf. I say, how could this brat possibly be richer than me? Uncle, it seems that Qin Yu is probing our Yun family on behalf of someone else. Yun Fan nodded. That is indeed a possibility. Humph. I think it was Uncle's cultivation that scared that Qin Yu away. That's why he didn't dare to spout any more nonsense and left with his tail between his legs. Fong Huohuo sneered. Yun Yi and the others nodded. Yun Fan turned around. Shiweqing, don't associate with this person in the future. Yun Shiweqing panicked. Father, fellow Taoist Qin isn't that sort of person. Yun Fan coldly shouted, Father, I don't care who he is. From what I know, this person isn't someone you can befriend. Do you hear me? Yin Xueqing opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. She remained silent. Leaving Snowfall City, Qin Yu looked at the frozen lake and shook his head, a bitter smile on his face. The ice-type spirit item was actually in the hands of the Yun family. Yin Xueqing had shown graciousness to him. Even if she didn't know, he couldn't pretend to be ignorant. Great waves surged in his heart. Finally, he gave up on any thoughts of attacking the Yun family. If it was someone else, so what if it was a fake nascent soul? Did they really think that he would be afraid? Let's go. Since they couldn't snatch it away, staying in the Driftsnow City would only be a waste of time. Shwa, with a flash of light, Qin Yu shot up into the skies. But soon his complexion changed, and he looked forwards. A faint smell of blood wafted through the wind. There seemed to be cries and screams in his ears. If this were an ordinary slaughter, Qin Yu would have seen it many times and wouldn't have cared. But these cries and screams seemed to be from women and children. Whoosh! Qin Yu's speed increased. After rushing over a high slope, he could clearly see the situation behind him. It was clear that this was a deliberate ambush. Nearly all of the guards had been slaughtered. Only a small number of men were still fighting to the death, wounded. The long caravan had been cut into several sections. Several carriages were burning, making the blood around them even more dazzling. The corpses of women and children were lying on the ground. As Qin Yu saw this, his pupils shrank. Bang, the ground collapsed. Qin Yu rushed forwards, punching out a fist. A black-clothed man was sent flying backwards with a miserable scream. With loud, crackling sounds, the man was smashed into pieces before he even fell to the ground. Like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, Qin Yu angrily attacked. In several breaths of time, several more black-clothed men died where they stood. There's a master. Retreat. The remaining black-clothed men all turned and fled. Qin Yu chased after them and killed 3 more. After a moment of hesitation, he didn't continue killing. The caravan was filled with cries and wails. Several wounded men fell to the ground, but they still bowed with gratitude. Thank you, Senior, for helping us. Qin Yu's eyes flashed with a trace of unwillingness. Just what happened that they would do such a cruel thing? The men looked hesitant. At this time, a woman with disheveled hair and a young child's corpse in her arms staggered forwards and fell to her knees. Senior, my family inadvertently obtained a communication jade slip and thus suffered such a great calamity. My family's old master passed away long ago, leaving only my son behind. Now that he has died, I have nothing left in my life. I am willing to give this jade slip to you, and I only hope that you can take revenge for my son and my family. Puff! The dagger pierced through the woman's heart. Blood flowed from the corners of her mouth, and she died. Qin Yu opened his palm to reveal a black jade slip, a faint demonic energy lingering around it. Mistress! With sorrowful cries, several surviving guards struggled to their knees. I beg you, my lord, take revenge for my Li family. The caravan began to cry out. Qin Yu looked at the widened eyes of the woman and the young child's corpse in her arms. After a long period of silence, he slowly said, I agree. He reached out a hand and took the jade slip. This was his reward. Only after receiving the reward did he have the right to kill. Qin Yu didn't know what was in the jade slip, nor did he have any intention of looking through it. Who was it that killed the Li family? Tell me. A moment later, a beam of light shot into the skies. Strong winds whipped around Qin Yu's hair, revealing his face. His eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. Hashtag, 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 he accompanied his wife to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. Chapter 104. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. 800 miles south of the Driftsnow City, there was a small city named Greenwood. Within the city, there was a major clan, the Doe clan. Love go small, say, Netka today. The gate of the Doe family was tightly shut, and security was tight both inside and outside. All the masters of the family had been summoned back, and they were gathered in a secret room for an emergency meeting. According to the clan's report, the one who saved the Leaf family must be a golden core cultivator. It's not an ordinary golden core. I think it's at least a mid-stage golden core. It's not impossible for him to reach the late stage. You've seen the corpses we brought back. All the bones in the body were shattered with a single punch. This kind of power is too terrifying. The more they discussed, the more flustered the Doe family became. Even now, they were still confused. Since when did the Leaf family have such a powerful friend? As rivals of many years, the Doe family's understanding of the Leaf family could be said to be extremely deep. After many discussions, they came to the conclusion that the person who had interfered was most likely a passing powerhouse who had been dissatisfied with the Doe family's actions of eliminating the root of the problem. This made everyone in the Doe family relax a little. No matter how strong a passerby was, it was one thing for him to force them to retreat, but he wouldn't stand up for the Leaf family and continue to make things difficult for the Doe family. It was a pity that the juniors of the Doe family had died too unjustly. The upper echelons of the Doe family understood that no matter how angry they were, they could only choose to swallow this matter. Doe family's patriarch, Doe Janda, said in a deep voice, "All right, 3 days have passed. Since that mysterious powerhouse hasn't come, the matter should be over. However, in order to avoid any accidents, the matter with the Leaf family will be postponed. It's just a bunch of women and children. We'll just find a chance to get rid of them in the future." "Yes, patriarch." All the experts of the Doe family stood up and said. Suddenly, a cold voice came from outside the door. "The Doe family has maliciously occupied the Leaf family's property for many years, and because of this, they killed the Leaf family. Their crimes are extremely heinous, and everyone has the right to punish them." "Who is it?" Doe Janda roared in anger. The chamber's door opened, and Chin Yu stepped in. His face was cold and callous, without the least bit of emotion. A moment later, he turned around and left, closing the door behind him. After that, when night fell, the Doe family did not see any movement in the secret chamber. After asking for permission and receiving no response, they carefully opened the secret chamber door. Then everyone froze on the spot, their faces pale. Led by Doe Janda, the 17 Doe family experts in the secret room were all killed, their heads separated from their bodies. At this time, Chin Yu had already left Green Forest City. When he killed the evil leader, he didn't implicate the ordinary Doe family clansmen. The reason why he waited for 3 days was because he wanted to investigate the grudges between the Leaf family and the Doe family. This was simple. In a single day, Chin Yu had found out what the Doe family had done. The remaining 2 days were given to the Doe family to gather their experts. Since they were going to kill, they should do it cleanly. With the death of one more bad person, perhaps in this world, there would be a few innocent people who would be spared. Chin Yu never thought of himself as selfless or someone who stood on the moral high ground. But there were always some things he couldn't endure. Perhaps this was the bottom line. A light flashed in his hand, and a black jade slip appeared. He said in a soft voice, "Everyone from the Leaf family, I have avenged you. Please rest in peace." "Who?" A gust of wind stirred up in the air, causing the leaves to rustle. It seemed as if they were thanking him, but also as if they were sighing in relief. Chin Yu was silent for several breaths of time. He probed the jade slip with his divine sense. He wanted to see just what sort of news could cause the Doe family to act so murderously and completely exterminate the Leaf family. A moment later, Chin Yu laid down the jade slip, a complex expression on his face. He didn't know just what sort of mood he was in right now. Snowfall City's Yin family had suffered a setback, and when they left the city, they were ambushed. After rescuing them, he obtained a jade slip. Within the jade slip was some recent secret news of the demonic path. The demonic path had made a great move in the sea region, and it seemed to be related to some great treasure. It involved spiritual objects of the 5 elements. That's right, spiritual objects of the 5 elements. Moreover, there was more than one. Chin Yu never imagined that he would obtain such precious news in such a way. Perhaps this was the faint will of the dark world repaying him for his good deeds. After thinking for a long time, Qin let out a deep breath, a firm look on his face. It seemed that he would have to go to the sea region. The Southern Empire was located in the south, and the Northern Dynasty was located in the north. The two countries covered an extremely large area, so large that it was impossible for an ordinary cultivator to travel through them in their entire lives. But even if the territory of the two countries was added together, it wouldn't even be a tenth of the sea region, or even 100th of it. This was because for the endless years, no one had ever reached the other side of the sea. It was as if it were infinite, as boundless as the starry skies. In the vast sea region, some islands would occasionally appear. They were like pearls that adorned the deep blue curtain of the sea. In ancient times, there were cultivators who, for various reasons, would step into the sea region and settle down on the islands. In normal circumstances, these people were collectively referred to as cultivators from the sea region. Of course, they were at most guests and not the masters of the sea region. The ones who truly controlled the entire sea region, the overlords of the sea, were the monster races of the sea, their numbers so terrifying that it was impossible to count them all. There were even human cultivators who predicted many years ago that if it weren't for the monster races being unable to leave the sea for too long, the Southern Empire and Northern Dynasty would have been occupied by them. At this time, Qin was in such a sea region. Beneath him was a small island that was over 10 miles wide. There were clear traces of artificial transformation on the island. Verdant trees formed a shade that swayed in the sea breeze. Fellow Taoist, come down and rest your feet. After our sea-gazing cape, there isn't a suitable place to stay for another several thousand miles. Beneath a pergola on the island, a cultivator selling sea items shouted out. His face was black from the sea breeze, and his white eyes were particularly eye-catching. Sea items sounded very general, but the truth was that all cultivators who set foot in the sea region needed equipment. For instance, a compass used to determine direction. It was a simple magic tool, but it could allow one to constantly maintain their direction in the sea region without any direction. There was also the Thousand Craft House. This was a treasure woven from a special type of vine. It was soft and could be folded at will. Once it was opened, it would become a small wooden house that could float on the sea for several years. It wouldn't fear the attacks of seawater or ordinary waves. It was the best choice to temporarily rest. Finally, there was the wind listening conch. After a sea creature died, the shell left behind could be placed next to one's ear, and one could hear the sounds of storms from far away. A cultivator that hadn't experienced a storm at sea would never know how terrifying it was. If one was unlucky and a golden core cultivator was sucked into it, they would similarly disappear without a trace. Qin landed. He cupped his hands together and said, I must disappoint fellow Taoist. On the way down, I've already purchased everything I need. The cultivator beneath the pergola grinned. It's fine. As long as you come down, I can always sell you something. It doesn't matter how much I earn. After all, accumulating sand can form a mountain. This person was quite direct. Qin smiled and sat down on the side. Fellow Taoist, if you're so confident, then I want to see just what good things you have. My name is Hussein. It sounds fake, but it is my real name. If there's someone to blame, it's my father and mother's fault. They were too casual when they gave me names. Hussein had a friendly personality, and his tone was casual and unpretentious. It was easy for others to have a favorable impression of him. He looked around and lowered his voice. There are many cultivators that come to the island every day, but I rarely greet them. Does fellow Taoist Qin know why? Qin Yu's eyebrows shot up. Hussein smiled in satisfaction. I know how to judge people. With just a glance, I can judge 70 to 80% of them. Fellow Taoist Qin, your foundation establishment aura is ordinary and you don't have anything special on you. But I am certain that you are not an ordinary person. Don't ask me how I can tell. This sort of thing can only be sensed. I can't explain it. Qin Yu maintained his composure. Then, does fellow Taoist who have something good that you want to trade with someone like me, who doesn't seem ordinary? Hussein nodded. The netherworld ship. His solemn expression didn't last for more than a second before it was broken by a smile. "How about it? Are you interested?" Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Since he had stepped into the sea region, he had naturally investigated it. He naturally knew of the illustrious reputation of the Netherworld ship. Moreover, where he wanted to go, he needed the Netherworld ship to open a path. In the legends, in ancient times, there was a ship filled with 10,000 people that disappeared in the sea. Several hundred years later, it suddenly reappeared. Besides being old and dilapidated, the ship was nearly intact, but the 10,000 people on board had all disappeared. Some people boarded the Netherworld ship and discovered that this ship could actually pull people into a sea region that was filled with reefs and a cold strength. This place was filled with departed spirits and a massive number of mutated sea monster beasts that were fierce and bloodthirsty. But at the same time, this sea region also contained countless precious treasures that caused the eyes of countless cultivators to turn red with greed. This ship was the Netherworld ship, and that strange sea region was called the Netherworld Sea. There was a great deal of information contained within the demonic path jade slip. Although it wasn't completely clear, every bit of information pointed to the Netherworld Sea. Husan was calm and unperturbed, as if he had good news in his hands and wasn't afraid that Qin Yu wouldn't buy it. Qin Yu's thoughts raced. He lightly said, "News about the Netherworld ship is something that every cultivator that enters the sea region would be interested in. But how do I know that your information is correct?" Husan pointed a finger. "Fellow Taoist Qin, ask around. I have been here for dozens of years, and when have I ever sold false information? If I really did that, then with my little bit of weight, I would have long since been torn to shreds and thrown into the sea to feed the fish." Qin Yu suddenly stood up. As Husan was in a daze, Qin Yu had already walked several dozen meters away. He found a cultivator that did the same business as Husan and spoke in a low voice. This person he actually went to ask. Husan's lips twitched. "Was it really okay for you to make your distrust so obvious?" A moment later, Qin Yu returned. He nodded and said, "Fellow Taoist Hu, I will buy your information." Husan's complexion changed several times before he squeezed out a smile. He dryly said, "Fellow Taoist Qin is indeed cautious." Qin Yu nodded. "I do think that it's never wrong to be a bit more careful at any time." Husan immediately decided not to speak any more nonsense with him. Otherwise, he feared that he wouldn't be able to suppress his anger and his business would collapse. He stretched out a hand. 1,000 spirit stones, no bargaining. Qin Yu didn't even blink. 300. Blue veins popped up on Husan's forehead. He had seen people haggle, but he had never seen anyone haggle like this. It was fine if he was cut in half at the waist, but to cut off 70% of the price, he really dared to ask for it. He took a deep breath. 800. This is the friendship price that I gave you. It would be impossible for anyone else to come here. Qin Yu had a faint expression. 400 is the most I can go. Husan choked on his anger and roared out, "Fellow Taoist Qin, this is the Netherworld ship, the Netherworld ship that represents countless opportunities. If you are late, you might not be able to make it." Qin Yu let out a breath. "But there is also a possibility that this is a real Netherworld ship and it will never return." Husan was left speechless. Every time the Netherworld ship appeared, there were people that struck it rich, but there were even more that died. He clenched his teeth. 600. If I miss even a single bit, I won't sell it. Qin Yu faintly smiled. "Deal." A moment later, a weeping Husan sent off fellow Taoist Qin who had rested enough. When Qin Yu's figure vanished from sight, his sad expression turned to one of satisfaction. "Hee hee, brat, you want to fight with me? You're still too young." Chapter 105. Genius 1 Second. Remember if you want to go. This is the network that provides you with wonderful novels to read. The boy that old 3 spoke of had a calm expression. After leaving the island, he used the compass to guide him towards the place where the Netherworld ship would appear. He was well aware that 600 spirit stones was a great loss. After all, once news began spread, its value would rapidly fall. Qin Yu had cut down the price and observed old 3's actions in order to determine just how much value the information in his hands still had. The results allowed him to feel a little more at ease. News of the Netherworld ship shouldn't have spread out on a large scale yet. While he couldn't be considered to have taken the lead, he shouldn't be the last to find out. Of course, another function was to tell those around him that he was extremely poor and wasn't some fat sheep that didn't care about a few hundred spirit stones. The sea region was vast and boundless. To a certain degree, the degree of chaos and darkness here was far beyond what the land could compare with. Although he wasn't afraid, it was always better to have less trouble. As he raced along, he didn't encounter any unlucky tsunamis that would cause people to pale at the mere mention of them, nor did he encounter any murderous activities. Besides a few blind sea monsters that jumped out, Chinyu easily dealt with them. His journey was unbelievably smooth. Half a month later, after traveling at least 100,000 miles, Chinyu entered the deep sea. Of course, this so-called deep sea was only what cultivators believed. In terms of the entire sea region, this depth was only the periphery. The 3 black islands were arranged in a triangular formation. Whirlpools appeared and disappeared from time to time. It could be seen how harsh the underwater environment was. Chinyu carefully checked his surroundings. After determining that this was the 3 mountain islands, he revealed a happy expression. He had finally arrived. The 3 islands were extremely close to each other, and each island had an active volcano. Thus they were named after the 3 mountains. Because the underground volcanoes were unstable and the surrounding waters were filled with reefs, even though the 3 islands weren't small, very few people came here. Most people would rest for a bit before leaving, so they could be considered relatively deserted. But now, the 3 islands were covered in pavilions. In just a dozen some days, they had formed several lively streets and large trading markets. Countless cultivators came and went, making the place lively and noisy. Chinyu landed. Although he wasn't surprised by the current situation, he still sighed inwardly. The Netherworld ship had a limit to how many people it could carry. Once a certain value was reached, no one else would be able to enter. But first come, first served wasn't absolute. As long as a cultivator below the ship could kill a cultivator on the ship before it set sail, they could automatically take over that cultivator's position. And from the moment the Netherworld ship appeared to the moment it set sail, the time it docked was not the same. If they were lucky, they might be able to set sail in an hour. If they were unlucky, they might have to stay for a day or even longer. But no matter how long it took, the only difference was how much blood was shed. People would eventually die. Those who were interested in the Netherworld ship all knew about this. Thus, the atmosphere on the island was quite solemn. Besides their companions and friends, everyone looked at outsiders with cold eyes. Because perhaps in the near future, these strangers who did not know each other would wield their swords at each other. Chinyu blended into the flow of people and walked towards the center of the island. Suddenly, he frowned and a cold light appeared in his eyes. When he turned around and looked back, the feeling of being stared at by the crowd had already disappeared. But Chinyu believed that his senses weren't wrong. Just now, someone had noticed him and revealed killing intent. Who was it? Chinyu carefully looked around, but as far as he could see, he couldn't find a single familiar face. Taking a deep breath, he gathered his thoughts and turned to leave. In his heart, however, he was already on guard. He had just arrived at 3 mountain islands, and someone had already revealed killing intent towards him. No matter how he looked at it, this was a terrible situation. It seemed that he would have to be more careful. At a temporary inn on 3 mountain islands, Chinyu bought a room and stayed there until the Netherworld ship appeared. The structure and layout were simple and crude, but the price was ridiculously high. But if he spent this amount of spirit stones, he would at least be able to find a slightly safer place to live. It was worth it. The atmosphere on the island was tense. There wasn't much to do, and there wasn't anyone he was familiar with, so Chinyu didn't plan on going out. He would just wait for the Netherworld ship to arrive. On another island, a few cultivators entered a room and shut the door tightly. The leader turned around and said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Chi, what happened? Why did you suddenly reveal killing intent toward a stranger?" That person's reaction was sharp, and he almost locked onto us. Chi Quan's complexion was ugly. He turned his hand and took out a bronze mirror. The surface was mottled. Senior apprentice Sister Xiang died not long after she handed over this treasure. When I saw that cultivator today, the bronze mirror emitted fluctuations. I am sure that it was that person who killed her. The person clenched his teeth. Elder Han, we must take revenge for her. Han Shanai frowned. After several breaths of silence, he said, Fellow Taoist Qi, we have the Saint Lord's hopes on us, so we cannot be careless in our actions. The sea monster royal family has already sent something, so it is best if we don't complicate matters. He paused for a moment and then continued to say, if you want to take revenge, you can do so when the Netherworld ship arrives. If you can't, you will have plenty of chances after entering the Netherworld Sea. What he said was the truth, but the more important reason was that Qin Yu gave him a thorny feeling. If he couldn't provoke him, it was best to stay as far away from him as possible. Just thinking about it, anyone that could kill that woman Xiang Ruyu would inevitably have some methods. This surname, Qi risked his life for his lover, but that wasn't something he could do. Qi Quan panicked. When the Netherworld ship arrived, several thousand cultivators had boarded it at the same time, and a bloody slaughter had occurred. It would have been incredibly difficult to lock on a Qin Yu at that time. As for the chances of encountering him again after entering the Netherworld Sea, they were so small that they could be ignored. He guessed that Han Shanai didn't want to stir up trouble. His thoughts raced, and he said, Elder Han, you have seen the strength of my copper mirror. According to what I know, this mirror was obtained by senior apprentice Sister Xiang from some ancient cultivator's cave dwelling. It is highly likely that this person is one of the cultivators that senior apprentice Sister Xiang cooperated with. Han Shanai shook his head. If there are some harvests, then it is possible to kill him. But no one can be sure whether or not this is the case. Love go little say, Netku, Qi Quan cursed inwardly. He clenched his teeth and said, Elder Han, feel free to do as you please. If there are no harvests afterwards, then I will give this copper mirror to you. Han Shanya's eyes brightened. Really? Qi Quan roared. I want him to die without a grave. Han Shanai laughed. Good. Outside the 3 mountain islands, in the inky black waters, several massive shadows were hidden. Have you found them? I've locked onto them. They are on the 3 mountain islands. There are many cultivators on the islands. If we directly capture them, I fear there will be trouble. What trouble would there be? These human cultivators are active in the territory of my sea races. Do you think they would dare to disrespect my sea races? Divine sense fluctuations silently passed through the water as the several shadows communicated with each other. Suddenly, the largest shadow said, That's enough. The human cultivators aren't easy to deal with. Their current relationship with my sea races can be considered stable, so let's avoid conflict as much as possible. Let's go take the parting water bead and secretly capture them so that we don't alert them. The other shadows nodded. Whoosh! The waves broke apart, and the shadows swam into the deep sea, vanishing from sight. Qin Yu was preparing to adjust his condition to its peak when the Netherworld ship arrived. At the same time, he would maintain a low profile and not reveal his strength in front of others. This was because after he entered the Netherworld Sea region, that would be the time when the cruel competition and slaughter would truly appear. It was because of this that he had closed himself up in his room. But as Qin Yu was refining the pills, he suddenly frowned. Pa! His hand slapped the ground, and he moved several feet to the side, avoiding the black iron rod that pierced out from the ground. Bang! The prayer mat was pierced through. Unable to withstand such a formidable strength, it shattered into fragments that filled the skies. Qin Yu's heart chilled. It wasn't that he couldn't control his strength, but that he had deliberately shattered the prayer mat to interfere with his line of sight. Just as his thoughts raced, there was the sound of breaking air. Several beams of dark light shot straight towards his face from behind. Before they arrived, a faint stench entered his nose. Qin Yu thrust out his palm, and boundless strength gushed out from the void, imprisoning the beams of dark light. But in the next moment, his complexion changed. He stomped his feet and retreated, smashing through a wall. Bang! Bang! With a deep explosion, the beams of dark light exploded at the same time. Tiny and sharp fragments shot out in all directions with a terrifying tearing strength. Chinyu flicked his sleeves and sent the fragments flying away. His eyes instantly locked onto a shadow. Although there was no one there, his divine sense still slowed down. A fist punched out. A violent aura surged forwards like a great river. The shadow twisted and a black-robed figure appeared. He coldly snorted and thrust out his hand. But he seemed to have underestimated the strength of this fist. He stuffily coughed and drew back, anger in his eyes. However, this person clearly had some scruples. His eyes flashed, and he turned to leave. Chinyu stepped forwards and soared up like an eagle. He was sure that this black-robed person was related to the inexplicable killing intent he had felt before. Since this person had jumped out, how could he let him go? As for exposing his strength, Chinyu suddenly realized that if he did so, he might be able to avoid a great deal of trouble when he boarded the Netherworld ship. With this thought in mind, he moved even faster. The boundless aura around him could be sensed by everyone on the 3 mountain islands. Countless cultivators looked up, their pupils shrinking. What a powerful cultivation! What a terrifying infernal energy! In an instant, countless people remembered Chinyu's face. They secretly decided that in the future, it would be best if they didn't provoke this person. But there were also many cultivators that smirked, revealing a bit of ridicule. Just because he had a bit of strength, he dared to act so recklessly. It was clear that he was brainless. This sort of person often died the fastest. There was no need to fear him. Han Shanya's complexion darkened. If he wasn't worried that he would cause too much noise and be discovered by the sea monster royal family, why would he fear this person behind him? Now he had returned without any results and was being chased away. Not only did he not obtain any benefits, but he also lost a bit of face. This was just too hateful. Shua, Han Shanai stopped. He sneered and thrust out his palm. His momentum was vast and boundless. It was like a mountain had come crashing down on his head, leaving him beyond redemption. Chinyu clenched his fist and punched out. Bang! There was a loud explosion in the void. A terrifying shockwave stirred up strong winds, instantly sweeping up several wooden houses and tearing them to pieces. The cultivators living in these houses hurriedly moved away. Although their complexions were ugly, they could only accept the might of this battle. Han Shanai sneered. Brat, if you don't die, we will meet again. Shua, his body turned into several figures that flew in all directions. Chinyu's complexion darkened. These figures had the same aura, so he couldn't distinguish them. However, what did his final words mean? But soon, Chinyu found out. The inn's master was a 6th-level golden core cultivator. He respectfully came with a young girl and 6 large men. He pointed a finger and said, Everyone, this is the cultivator you found. He is the one who is renting the inn. The young girl had bright eyes and white teeth. Between her eyebrows was a delicate scale that shimmered beneath the sunlight. She coldly looked at Chinyu and waved her hand. Grab him. Chapter 106. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Shua, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. See Monster Royal Family. Low cries rang out from the crowd. Love, go small, say, Netku countless gazes became scorching hot, but when they fell on the 6 muscular men behind them, their gazes instantly became evasive and respectful. Although these 6 people are in human form, their auras are terrifying and their blood vitality is thick. They must be whale monsters. It is rumored that every adult clansman is comparable to a golden core whale monster. Those that have the qualifications to become royal guards are all elites. If the 6 whale monster elites join forces, they can crush anyone below the nascent soul realm. Although this person's cultivation is strong, unfortunately, for some unknown reason, he offended the Sea Demon Royal Clan. How can he escape? The 4 Sea Demon tribe powerhouses all took a step forward, causing the ground to tremble. A fierce, overbearing, and cold aura rushed towards them. Who? Chinyu's black robes fluttered in the wind. His eyes narrowed. He didn't know why, but at this moment, he didn't have the mood to think about it. Chinyu took a step, and the ground cracked as he rushed forwards. The crowd gasped. Facing four whale monster powerhouses, it was normal to turn and flee, but you actually chose to face them head-on. Was he courting death? Or courting death? Or he was courting death. Facing the whale monster race, a mere human cultivator actually dared to attack first. The whale monster on the left narrowed his eyes. A cold light flashed in them, and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. He stepped forwards and slapped out his fan-like hand. It whistled through the air, and it could be seen just how fast this seemingly clumsy slap was and how terrifying the power contained within it was. Chinyu didn't dodge or evade. He lifted a hand and punched out, meeting it head-on. Bang! There was a loud explosion like the beating of a great drum. Brutal strength collided between the two. Chinyu stuffily coughed, his complexion paling. He now had a clear understanding of the strength of the whale monsters. However, the other party was clearly even more shocked. His eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. Thud, 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 each step leaving a deep footprint. The most terrifying aspect of the whale monster was the strength of their mortal bodies. But the scene in front of them seemed to indicate that a human cultivator had forced back a whale monster in a collision of pure physical strength. The crowd gasped. This time was filled with shock. The complexions of the three whale monster masters darkened, and a dignified look appeared in their eyes. Even so, they remained as solemn as mountains, their auras calm and steady. Bang! The whale monster stepped forwards. His body was even taller, and his robes tightened around his body, outlining his incomparably strong body. It was easy to judge the strength of a whale monster. The size of their body often corresponded to their strength. With a deep shout and a ripping sound, the whale monster's robes burst apart from his muscles. He punched out his fists, his aura tyrannical and courageous. The cultivators in the back were shocked by the aura and subconsciously took a step back. When they reacted, their faces turned red. But at this time, no one had the mind to care about whether or not they were embarrassed. Everyone's eyes were focused on Chinyu. After forcing back the first whale monster powerhouse, Lin Ming didn't stop at all. He continued to rush forwards like a cheetah, crashing into the fist of the second whale monster powerhouse. No one could clearly see what had happened in the instant the two collided. They only felt a shock wave sweep over them, and a huge figure was sent flying. Crackle. This should be the sound of bones breaking. Chinyu's complexion paled even further. But the whale monster powerhouse that collided with him was constantly vomiting blood. Countless people widened their eyes. No one had expected such an outcome. The two whale monster powerhouses were panic-stricken. They hurriedly caught their fallen tribesmen. At this time, Chinyu's body flashed with light, and his speed suddenly rose, instantly breaking past the two. When he suddenly rushed forwards, he had relied on the strength of his mortal body. As he collided with the whale monster powerhouses in terms of physical strength, it made others forget that he was a human cultivator that excelled in magic power cultivation. Princess Lushy had a calm expression. As she looked at the rapidly approaching Chinyu, a trace of ridicule flashed in her icy cold eyes. Was this the beheading plan? If the sea monster royal family could be captured so easily, then the entire royal family would have been exterminated long ago. How could they have survived until today and ruled over the boundless sea region? Foolish and ignorant humans. Behind her, two 9-foot-tall diamond whale monster powerhouses stepped forwards, their eyes glaring at Chinyu like fierce eyes. A sound wave that couldn't be heard by the ear suddenly spread out, piercing towards Chinyu's soul like countless sharp awls. The crowd was far away, so they weren't affected. But there were still several people who stuffily coughed, and their faces paled. Whale cry. Whale monster commanders. The ranks of the whale monster race were simple. There were ordinary clansmen, elite clansmen, whale monster commanders, and the highest-ranked whale monster sovereign. The whale monster sovereign was comparable to a nascent soul. In the sea region, he could restore his true body and every move he made possessed the power to destroy the heavens and crack the earth. He was a true overlord of the sea. Whale monster commanders were at the second level and were absolute great figures of the whale monster race. Their strength was comparable to a human hollow nascent cultivator. Whale cry was something that only whale monster commanders could send out. It was a kind of innate divine sense attack, and its might was terrifying. If one had a weak soul, even if their soul didn't scatter beneath the bombardment of whale cry, their consciousness would still be crushed. Chinyu had revealed his powerful mortal body, and his magic power cultivation wasn't weak either. If so, then it was highly likely that his soul was his weakness. After all, humans had short lives. In order to constantly make breakthroughs in cultivation and obtain a longer lifespan, there was a limit to what they could cultivate. Chinyu's eyes instantly glazed over, and he revealed a pained expression. A whale monster commander stepped forwards and punched out at Chinyu's head. As for the other person, he stubbornly stood his ground, not leaving any openings. Whoosh! A blinding blood-red light erupted. The bloodstained lock smashed towards the whale monster commander. This was a one-time use demonic treasure that erupted with a terrifying killing power equal to its value. Even someone as strong as the whale monster commander's fist was torn apart, revealing pale, white bones as he was sent flying backwards. Now, the only one left standing in front of Chin Yu was the last whale monster commander. His expression was dignified. With a loud shout, a deep blue light erupted in front of him. It billowed like waves, protecting him and Princess Lushy behind him. This wasn't because they feared him, but because as royal guards, their most important mission was to protect the royal family from harm. As long as they could block Chinyu for several breaths of time, the whale monster masters would have a chance to catch their breath. No matter how strong Chinyu was, he wouldn't be able to take even half a step closer to the princess. Chinyu's eyes brightened. He stepped in front of the deep blue light and punched out his fist without hesitation. Dong! The entire curtain of blue light trembled and was immediately torn apart. Chinyu's fist forcefully squeezed through. For the first time, surprise appeared in Princess Lushy's eyes. She never imagined that this human cultivator would have such a powerful mortal body. But right after, this surprise turned into a sneer. The protection of the royal family could only be used by the guard captain. It was one of the strongest defensive methods of the royal family. So how could it be so easily broken? Once strength erupted, this human cultivator would be pulled in and crushed to pieces in the blink of an eye. But at this time, the sneer in Princess Lushy's eyes froze. In front of her, the guard captain that was as reliable as a mountain suddenly fell backwards. His body rapidly turned black. His body twitched, and he foamed at the mouth. This was poison. But what sort of poison could be so terrifying and swift that it could instantly overturn the all-swallowing whale monster commander? Before Princess Lushy could wake up from her confusion, an iron-like hand grasped her slender neck and forcefully pulled her into his embrace. Who? Beside her ears was a deep and hurried breathing. His body was so close that she could clearly feel his strong heartbeat in his chest. This didn't make one feel distressed. Rather, it emitted an incomparably fierce and formidable aura. The entire audience fell deathly silent. No one expected this to be the result. A single person had pierced through 6 whale monster powerhouses and single-handedly captured a sea monster royal. This should have only existed in a script or in one's imagination, but when it truly appeared in front of them, it was actually so breathtaking. Don't move. His voice wasn't pleasant to hear, but it was calm, like water beneath a layer of ice, without the least bit of emotion. Moreover, it gave off a heavy feeling that everything he said would come true. The hairs on Princess Lushy's neck stood up. She could feel a faint, killing intent from this voice. But as a member of the royal family, she had enough confidence and pride. Her expression remained icy cold as she coldly said, "If you touch me in the slightest, you will be chased down by the sea races for the rest of your life." Chinyu lightly said, "I know." What sort of reply was this? Was he ignoring her? Anger surged in Princess Lushy's heart. Her body froze. The hand around her neck tightened, and a faint blue color appeared on her snow-white skin. Even breathing became difficult. "Stop! If you dare to touch the princess in the slightest, you will die without a grave." The whale monster powerhouses were panic-stricken. Besides the one who had been poisoned to the ground, everyone else rushed forwards. But none of them dared to move recklessly. If there was a medicine for regret, they would have already eaten several carts of it. If they knew this would happen, they would have rushed forwards and killed this bastard instead of allowing the princess to fall into a trap. If anything happened to the princess, their best fate would be to commit suicide. Thinking of this, the eyes of the 5 whale monsters turned red. Chinyu had no expression. "Everyone, I have no idea why I have offended the sea monster royal family, but since things have come to this point, there is no way to resolve this peacefully. In order to avoid an even worse situation from occurring, I ask that you all restrain yourselves and not chase after me. Otherwise, while I don't know if I can escape, the princess will definitely die." He grabbed Princess Lushy and began to retreat. The crowd parted to the sides. Everyone kept their distance, fearing that if they approached, they would be regarded as accomplices. After recovering from their shock, they looked at Chinyu. Although there was shock and admiration in their eyes, they couldn't hide the pity in their eyes. This matter had become so big that even the sea monster royal family had been captured. It was clear that there was no way to resolve this peacefully. Perhaps they might be safe today, but their final fate could already be predicted. The 5 sea monster powerhouses watched helplessly as Chinyu brought the princess further and further away. Their faces flushed red and blood energy roared around them, but none of them dared to take a single step forwards. Finally, the whale monster commander roared out, "Let's go." Lifting up the poisoned commander, the whale monster fellows shot up into the skies. After flying out of the range of the 3 mountain islands, a dim light flashed in the air to reveal their true forms. They were terrifying whales that were dozens of meters long and weighed tens of thousands of genes. This was the first time many cultivators had seen the true forms of whale monsters. They cried out in alarm, their faces filled with shock. Bang! Bang! They crashed into the sea surface, setting off massive waves. Several massive shadows instantly vanished from sight. But everyone knew that it was impossible for the whale monster powerhouses to truly leave. They would surely be closely monitoring the 3 mountain islands. At the same time, news of the royal family being captured would surely be sent back to the sea monster royal palace as quickly as possible. A storm was coming. Chapter 107. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. On the 3rd day, around the 3 mountain islands, the number of sea monsters rose dramatically. Powerful auras appeared from time to time, causing the cultivators on the islands to panic. Everyone knew what the reason was. As time passed, more and more people began to worry that the sea monster race would arrive en masse and affect their ability to board the Netherworld ship. On the 3 mountain islands, several famous powerhouses had no choice but to meet up with each other. After an emergency discussion, they came to a consensus. The cultivators who were holding the sea monster royal captive couldn't be allowed to stay. But in that battle, Chinyu had revealed his formidable strength. Wanting to let him go wasn't a simple matter. Of course, the most important reason was that no one wanted to offend Chinyu and provoke such a terrifying enemy. After arguing for a long time, a cultivator finally proposed that since no one was willing to notify him, then everyone should go together. The law didn't punish the masses. No matter how arrogant Chinyu was, he shouldn't form enmity with all of them just because of this. After a short period of hesitation, this decision was passed. Finally, 13 cultivators were chosen. They all had solemn expressions as they knocked on Chinyu's door. "Fellow Taoist Chin, you and I are both human cultivators. In our grudges with the sea races, we should stand on your side. But the Netherworld ship is about to arrive, and the fellow Taoists on the islands are worried that the massive gathering of the sea races will affect this matter. A few more people opened their mouths. Even though their words weren't clear, the meaning was clear. Old man, could you leave the 3 mountain islands? Chinyu was silent for a moment. He cupped his hands together and said, I understand what fellow Taoists are thinking, but I came here for the Netherworld ship, so I will not leave. Without waiting for their complexions to change, he continued to say, however, I can leave the 3 mountain islands and live in the nearby sea region. Although this was a bit different from what everyone expected, if Chinyu left the 3 mountain islands, the sea monster races shouldn't vent their anger on them. Moreover, Chinyu had already taken a step back. If they continued to say anything else, they feared it would backfire. After a short discussion, the cultivators cupped their hands together in thanks. After expressing their apologies, they bid their farewells and left. Chinyu shook his head and returned to his room. There was a helpless look on his face, but he soon composed himself. He turned and said, Your Highness, we will have to change locations. Princess Lushy's cultivation was sealed. Her face was icy cold as she heard this, and then she closed her eyes. Chinyu didn't care. After tidying up a bit, he picked her up and walked out. When he lifted it, it felt like he was grabbing a chicken or a duck. Princess Lushy's eyes widened and her face flushed red. In her entire life, when had she ever suffered such humiliation? This damned, despicable, rude, damned human cultivator. Once she regained her freedom, she would definitely chop him into pieces and fry him. The cultivators of the 3 mountain islands had already heard the news and had been paying attention to Chinyu's residence. As they saw him prepare to leave, they relaxed and smiled. But in the blink of an eye, the smile froze on his face and the corners of his mouth twitched. This was the sea monster royal family's princess, and yet she was so rude. Did she really not plan on leaving him with the slightest chance of survival? As he strode forward, countless eyeballs and jaws fell to the ground. He also received countless pitiful gazes from those who had given up on healing themselves. Chinyu arrived at the seashore. The turbulent currents and the endless whirlpools on the surface of the sea suddenly boiled up. Countless angry roars echoed out from the seabed. Rumble, rumble. Large shadows rapidly rose up from the seabed. They broke through the water surface, revealing pairs of bloodshot eyes that glared at him. This human, this damned human, this barbaric and ignorant human, he actually dared to treat the pride of the sea races like this, the brightest pearl of the deep sea, Her Highness Princess Lushy. Die. He had to be killed. Cruel and cruel killing, intent carried with it endless waves of foul wind, rushing in from all directions. The skies rapidly darkened. Endless water vapor rose into the air, as if a violent storm were brewing. Princess Lushy's eyes were tightly shut and her body shivered. Although the sea monsters were angry because of the humiliation she had suffered, they could still see her distressed appearance. As the proud princess who had always regarded herself as the proud daughter of the heavens, how could she accept this reality? Shame and anger mixed together. Her hatred towards Chinyu also rose to a new height. Unfortunately, when these fluctuations of emotions superimposed on each other, they were far too intense. Princess Lushy coughed and fainted. Release the princess. Brat, you are dead. In the 9 heavens and 10 earths, no one can save you. I will tear you to pieces. Billowing curses echoed between the skies and water. Chinyu looked up, his face expressionless. Shut up and back away, otherwise don't blame me for being impolite. His fingers moved. All of the sea monsters gasped for breath, but none of them dared to curse at the heavens. This bastard, he was simply despicable to the extreme. If he had the guts, then let go of the princess, and we'll fight for 300 rounds. Whoosh! The sea surface suddenly broke apart, and a giant turtle floated up from the water. Only its shell was exposed, but even so it was over 3,000 feet long. If its entire body emerged from the water, it could be imagined just how large its mortal body was. It was simply a moving mountain. On the back of the turtle stood a middle-aged man. He wore white clothes and had white hair. He had an extraordinary bearing. He cupped his hands together and said, Fellow Taoist Qin, Perhaps there is some misunderstanding between you and my sea monster race. Could you release Her Highness Princess first so that we can sit down and talk? Qin Yu remained silent. The middle-aged man frowned. Or, let's change the method. Fellow Taoist Qin, release the princess, and I will allow fellow Taoists to leave. The sea monster race will begin hunting you down in 3 days. Qin Yu shook his head. His voice suddenly turned cold. Does fellow Taoist really want to become enemies with my sea monster race? Qin Yu lightly said, does fellow Taoist really think that I will release her in this situation? Whether or not I want to be enemies with the sea monster race, this has already become a fact. So, if you don't want anything to happen to Her Highness Princess, then restrain your subordinates and don't make any dangerous moves. I guarantee that once I am safe, I will send Her Highness Princess away. Now have them draw back. On the back of the turtle, the white-clothed, white-haired man looked deeply at Qin Yu. Fellow Taoist Qin, I hope you don't regret this. Whoosh! The giant turtle sank into the sea. In the seaside area, the roaring sea monsters began to retreat. But their vicious eyes locked onto Qin Yu, not shifting away in the least. On the island, whether or not they were used to seeing Qin Yu, everyone who saw this couldn't help but praise him for his courage. Facing the sea monster race, and still not batting an eyelid, there weren't many cultivators in the entire sea region that could accomplish this. Many people began to inquire about who Qin Yu was. Unfortunately, after much searching, they found nothing. With a flick of his sleeves, a folded 1,000-craft house opened up and floated above. The sea surface gently undulated with the waves. Qin Yu carried Princess Lushy and jumped into the house. With a flick of his sleeves, the 1,000-craft house slowly floated over until it was 5,000 feet away from the 3 mountain islands. After leaving behind the imprisoned princess, Qin Yu sat down cross-legged. He took out a fishing rod from somewhere, threw down the line, and began to fish. As the waiting sea monsters saw this, they nearly exploded with rage. Arrogance to the extreme. All sorts of ordinary fish and shrimp in the sea had the potential to transform into sea monsters. They could be called their clansmen. Not only had this brat captured the princess, but he was also fishing right in front of them. This was naked contempt and ridicule. Several swordfish monsters were enraged. Amongst the sea monsters, they were the fastest race. With their long and sharp spines and long and narrow bodies, they had an unparalleled advantage. At this time, as a swordfish monster powerhouse sneered, several swordfish monsters rushed out. They shuttled through the 1,000-craft house at an astonishing speed, sweeping away all the ordinary fish and shrimp. Fish your ass! As the several swordfish monsters were triumphantly swimming through the sea at high speeds, occasionally making difficult provocative movements, Qin Yu suddenly moved. He flicked his sleeves, and a deep purple magic sword flew out, stabbing into the sea surface. With a loud, crackling sound, purple lightning spread out. The swordfish monsters shivered. They flipped over, revealing their white bellies. They floated to the surface, twitching and foaming at the mouth. Qin Yu praised, "What a big fish!" He rubbed his chin and whispered, "Steamed is too bland and fried is too greasy. How should I eat it?" The swordfish monster powerhouse was enraged. He wouldn't stare blankly on as his clansmen were cut open and eaten. With a sweep of his powerful tail, he exploded forwards, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the water. As he arrived within range of the 1,000-craft house, the magic sword released a bolt of lightning that fell down. This caused his body to tremble, but he didn't care about it at all, using his monster energy to expel the lightning. Good. Let this human junior see just how fierce my sea monster powerhouses are. To dare to become enemies with my sea monster race will be the greatest regret of his life. The sea monsters loudly shouted out. The swordfish monster powerhouse sneered. He opened his mouth, wanting to take away several of his clansmen. However, things wouldn't be so simple. This thunder magic sword seemed quite good, so he might as well take it away. Hum. Waves rose up, rolling up from all directions. The thunder magic sword trembled. Qin Yu shook his head. I just want to eat something, but I can't even calm down. He flicked his sleeves, and a 100-foot-tall bamboo appeared from thin air. It fell straight into the water. Its roots, trunk, branches, bamboo leaves, every inch of it leapt with a rich purple lightning. Crackle, crackle. The surrounding 1,000 feet of sea surface was instantly covered with lightning. The swordfish monster powerhouse's monster energy suddenly collapsed. Its entire body shivered, and its fish eyes popped open. Its body slowly flipped over, following in the footsteps of several juniors. Whoosh! On the surface of the sea, there was a great splash. Chinyu's eyebrows arched up. He had a look of praise on his face. This is truly worthy of being the depths of the sea. Even a fish can grow so large. I fear it's enough for an entire village of several hundred people to eat a delicious meal. I wondered just how many years it took for it to grow so large. If its meat is too old and chewed on like old tree roots, then it wouldn't be interesting at all. He hesitated for a moment. Then he clapped his hands. Let's do it over a large fire. If we cook it for a bit longer and add in more spices and peppers, the flavor will definitely be great. The swordfish monster powerhouse had a deep cultivation. Although it had been knocked unconscious by the thunder, it was still able to maintain its consciousness. As it heard these words, its eyes rolled up in anger. How shameful! How shameful! The face it had built up over several hundred years had been completely lost today. Before it could catch its breath, the swordfish monster powerhouse fainted. Chapter 108. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Showa Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The sea demons were dumbfounded. The sea region had always been their world. When had they ever met such an arrogant human? More importantly, this fellow was not only strong, but he also had many tricks up his sleeves. For example, he had never seen or heard of this bamboo before, but it could actually discharge electricity. The swordfish demon, Agio, could be considered quite a character, yet he was knocked unconscious by the lightning. One could imagine how powerful it was. Many pairs of eyes looked over, and a few electric eel demons shook their heads in fright, their faces sullen. The purple lightning was too fierce. Even though they were born to play with lightning, they still couldn't stand it. In the depths of the sea, the giant turtle floated like a small mountain. A faint demonic light spread out, forming a curtain that separated the seawater. The white-robed, white-haired man frowned. A screen of light appeared in front of him, recording everything that had happened on the surface of the sea. On the other side, the black-armored man was like a coiling dragon or a crouching tiger. His tall and sturdy body was like an iron tower. Just a glance was enough to make one feel terrified. He sat there without saying a word, his whole body surrounded by a baleful aura. This junior is very strong, the black-armored man said slowly. His voice was as steady as a mountain, and every word he spoke seemed to carry the weight of 10,000 caddies. The white-clothed, white-haired man cupped his hands together. Uncle Hai, are you not confident either? The black-armored man wasn't angered. He thought for several breaths of time and said, killing this person isn't difficult, but wanting to instantly kill him and leave the princess unharmed is extremely difficult. The sea monsters on the surface didn't know the black-armored man's evaluation. Otherwise, they would have cried out in alarm. Just how proud was this whale's sovereign that he would give such a high evaluation to a junior? The white-haired, white-clothed man bitterly smiled. Are we just going to allow him to continue being so impudent? Where would the face of my sea demon race go? The whale's sovereign looked up, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. His body stiffened and his heartbeat nearly stopped. Prince Whitemark, you are destined to inherit the throne and become the future ruler of the sea region. So how could you be so short-sighted? What was face? As long as my sea race kills this person in the end, plucks out his soul and scatters it, no one in the world will laugh at my race. Prince, please remember, in this world, the process is always the process. Only the result is the most important. The whale's sovereign closed his eyes, his stone-like face indifferent. The princess being captured is the fault of the whale monster race. The reason I personally came here is to erase this mistake. This junior will die. High Deep White respectfully bowed. Even though he was a sea monster royal prince and was reprimanded by the whale sovereign, he didn't feel annoyed at all. Rather, he was secretly happy. He turned and sat down, calming his mind. Since the whale sovereign had said that he wanted to kill Chinyu, all he needed to do was wait. Of course, it was impossible for Chinyu to really rip open the bellies of several swordfish monsters and eat their meat. The reason he appeared so tough was because he was pressuring the sea folk. Love, go small, say, Netko in the current situation. This was the only way for him to ensure a moment of stability. If he showed even the slightest intention of retreating, did he really think that the Sea Demon tribe was a bunch of pushovers? After putting away the magic sword and sky thunder bamboo, he entered his room and sat down cross-legged. Naturally, he wasn't cultivating. He only closed his eyes to meditate. Princess Lushy was right next to her. With a wave of his hand, he could grab her and end her life in the next moment. That was the worst possible outcome. Although Chinyu had said that regardless of whether he wanted to or not, he had already formed enmity with the sea monster races. Hatred was divided into different levels. Capturing the princess was one thing, but killing the princess was another matter altogether. He hoped that he could safely drag things out until the Netherworld ship arrived. As long as he boarded the ship and entered the Netherworld Sea region, he would be safe. Everyone knew that the sea monsters of the Netherworld Sea region weren't controlled by the sea monster royal family. Moreover, they hated the sea monsters of the outside world to the extreme. This was a land that the sea monster races couldn't control. Time passed day by day. The sea monsters glared at him, but none of them dared to casually approach the Thousand Craft house. The shadow in their hearts caused by the Sky Thunder bamboo was enough to cover them, and they wouldn't be able to walk out for many years. Occasionally, there would be some foolish ones that weren't afraid of death. As they saw the unlucky swordfish monsters that were still pissing themselves, they shivered and no longer dared to have any impulsive thoughts. The sixth day, Chinyu sat down cross-legged. His expression was calm, and his breath was long and light. No one could sense that his heart was tense. Not long after he left the 3 mountain islands, a creepy feeling rose from the depths of his heart. It was like some peerless, vicious beast had locked onto him. As long as he revealed the slightest flaw, those fierce fangs would tear apart his blood vessels and cleanly eat him up. This feeling was strange. No matter how Chinyu sensed it, he couldn't find the source. But the more he sensed it, the heavier the dread in his heart became. The sea monster races must have sent a terrifying master here, hiding in the shadows, waiting for a chance to attack. Up until today, everything had been calm. This was because they didn't have the confidence to ensure Princess Lushy's safety before killing him. Then, the chance they were waiting for was likely the Netherworld ship. When the Netherworld ship arrived, countless cultivators would surge forth. This would inevitably affect his senses and give the sea monster powerhouses a chance. Moreover, it couldn't be forgotten that there was another unknown factor hidden beside Chinyu, Princess Lushy. Although this princess had remained quiet after being captured by Chinyu, as a sea monster royal family member, Chinyu didn't believe that she didn't have any methods to deal with this. If so, then when the Netherworld ship arrived would be the time when Chinyu would face the greatest danger. His thoughts raced. Since he realized this, he couldn't stand idly by and wait for death. A moment later, a plan gradually formed in his mind. After carefully thinking it over and determining that there was nothing wrong with it, Chinyu calmed down a little. Now, all he had to do was wait for the Netherworld ship to arrive. 2 days later, at some point, the temperature between the heavens and earth suddenly fell by a great deal. A cold, aura spread through the world. Chinyu's eyes flashed open. He grabbed Princess Lushy and stepped out of the Thousand Craft house. He looked up into the skies above. The sun was bright, but the sunlight had turned pale white. It was icy cold, as if there was no warmth at all when it fell on his body. Waves suddenly rose up on the calm sea surface. They grew from small to large, becoming a raging tsunami. Around the Thousand Craft house, countless sea monsters revealed looks of disgust and disgust. They couldn't hide their fear as they turned to look deep into the sea. At some unknown time, a massive fog had appeared there. The deep gray color was cold and bleak, causing one's heart to subconsciously shiver. Walala, walala, there was the sound of seawater breaking apart. Like this, a large ship sailed out from the fog. It had a mottled hull, a broken ram, and a towering mast with damaged sails hanging from it. At first glance, it seemed like such a dilapidated ship. A slightly larger wave would be able to smash it into countless pieces. But it walked through the raging waves as if it were walking on flat ground. The massive hull floated above the waves, as if it were on a different plane. No matter how the waves crashed against it, it didn't shake at all. That chill that caused the temperature between the heavens and earth to fall came from this ship, as if it came from the netherworld and was stained with the aura of the dead. Netherworld ship. There were loud shouts from the 3 mountain islands. Countless cultivators widened their eyes, their faces filled with ecstasy and excitement. The crowd began to gather and stir restlessly, but no one moved. This was because it was impossible to board the netherworld ship before it stopped. If they recklessly approached, they might even be injured by the cold aura of the ship. Everyone's eyes widened as they waited for the netherworld ship to stop. There was only one exception. Chinyu lowered his head and looked at Princess Lushy in his hands. Whether or not this matter would succeed would depend on how much weight the princess had in the hearts of the sea monster races. Princess Lushy's heart shrank as a foreboding feeling rose in her heart. But before she could speak, a surge of magic power broke into her body. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and she fainted before she could even utter a single sound. "Brat, what do you dare? If you harm the princess in the slightest, I will skin you alive. You bastard, you still haven't let go." Even though the netherworld ship had arrived, the sea monster races still didn't let go of Chinyu's surveillance. His every move and action was watched by countless eyes. What he did to Princess Lushy immediately caused the eyes of countless sea monsters to turn bloodshot. Chinyu had no expression. He said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoists of the sea monster race, today I will be the first to step onto the netherworld ship." He didn't hide anything. With the support of magic power, his voice echoed through the air. On the 3 mountain islands, countless cultivators were rubbing their fists in anticipation. Then they were immediately enraged. "You're the first one, but what about us?" In particular, some tyrannically strong individuals who were filled with confidence had gloomy complexions that seemed as if they could drip water. The netherworld ship was extremely difficult to board. One needed to fight for a position, and if they didn't stay for a certain amount of time, it would cause serious bloodshed. With so many negative conditions, correspondingly, there had to be some benefits as compensation. These benefits were prepared for the first cultivator to step onto the netherworld ship. The cold strength that hadn't dissipated from the ship would condense into a block of black ice. To the variant sea monsters of the netherworld sea region, this was a great temptation. With this, as long as one's luck wasn't too bad, they could subdue a powerful variant sea monster. If they could use this as a mount or as a fighter, it could be said to be like adding wings to a tiger. Many people gathered their strength in order to rush in first place. But before they even started, Chinyu had already occupied the spot. What was the meaning of this? Surnamed Chin, just what was the meaning of this? The enraged cultivators glared at the 1,000-craft house, wishing they could use their eyes to tear Chinyu to pieces. The sea monster races were stunned for a moment before they flew into a rage. What was the meaning of this? Did he think they were slaves? That he could order them around? This human cultivator really deserved to be skinned alive, with tens of thousands of cold and callous eyes on him. If one's mental fortitude was slightly weaker, they wouldn't be able to withstand it. But Chinyu's complexion remained calm, without the slightest change. Before he spoke, he had already expected this situation. What was there to be afraid of with looks? If looks could kill, he would have long since been invincible under the heavens. Magic power surged in his hands, and a cruel aura spread outwards, covering Princess Lushy. No one doubted that with a single thought, the most dazzling pearl in the sea could be turned into minced meat. The sea monsters were enraged. They trembled. They had seen shameless people before, but they had never seen someone so shameless. This was simply breaking the bottom line of their monster lives. Whoosh! The giant turtle broke through the water. Deep White's complexion darkened. Fellow Taoist Qin, don't go too far. Qin Yu lightly said, I don't want to say the same words a second time. Either the sea monster races help me and be the first to step onto the Netherworld ship, or I will kill the princess now and accompany her on the road to the Yellow Springs. The Netherworld ship will soon stop. You don't have much time to consider. He didn't speak any further. Slaughter energy tumbled around him, making it clear that he wasn't speaking nonsense. Deep White's chest heaved up and down. He never imagined that Qin Yu would force the situation into a hopeless situation with a single move. Moreover, he had completely ruined the plan he had discussed with the Whale Sovereign. If he agreed and Qin Yu boarded the Netherworld ship, it would be even more difficult to rescue Lushy. But if he refused, Deep White wouldn't be wrong. This surnamed Qin really would kill someone. Even if he was pretending, he didn't dare to gamble. The Netherworld ship began to slow down, so it would stop. If he hesitated any longer, it would be too late. Chapter 109. Genius in a Second. Remember Love Go? This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Suddenly, several cultivators flew out from the 3 mountain islands. Each one was at the late Golden Core realm. Their powerful auras pierced through the skies like spears. Everyone from the sea monster race. The Netherworld ship is the only chance for us human cultivators to enter the Netherworld sea region. Your race has never interfered before. So, do you plan on making an exception today? The old man in the lead asked. Golden light appeared around him, and a figure circled around him. He was a hollow nascent soul realm powerhouse. On that day, this person had been the one who had advised Qin Yu to leave the 3 mountain islands. Deep White took a deep breath, his eyes cold. Do you mean that my sea monster royal family will lose their lives because of this? The old man frowned. I have no such intentions. But that surnamed Qin cultivator is only bluffing. You are all intelligent, so how could you possibly fall for his trap? Deep White sneered. Can you guarantee it? Or can you guarantee it? If something happens to my royal family's princess, will you bear the consequences? The complexions of the several people changed. Even if they had a 99% chance that Qin Yu wouldn't dare to kill them and perish together with them. But a 10% risk was more than enough. If they were truly related to this matter, then none of them would be able to survive the anger of the sea monster race. The hollow nascent soul old man had an ugly complexion. It looks like the sea monster race is preparing to intervene. Deep White had no expression. I hope that everyone can understand and not make things difficult for me. Whoosh, whoosh, the seawater shattered and countless sea monsters appeared. They viciously glared at the several people, their killing intent undisguised. The anger that had been bottled up in their hearts for the past several days made them wish that they could immediately begin a slaughter. The hollow nascent soul old man roared. Although the sea monster race is strong, the human cultivators of my 3 mountain islands will not agree to this. Bang, bang. The auras of powerhouses erupted from the 3 mountain islands, representing the unyielding attitude of the Golden Core powerhouses. It was going to be a large-scale battle between the human cultivators and the sea demon cultivators. Anger flashed in Deep White's eyes. Although he was a royal prince and was highly trusted by his royal father, it was because of this that he had to be even more careful. His brothers had never given up on coveting his position. If today's matter wasn't handled properly, then the delicate and fragile balance between the human cultivators and the sea demon tribes would be broken. The series of severe consequences that would occur would be unbearable even for him. As if sensing the sea demon's hesitation, the human cultivators' momentum increased. Golden Core powerhouses constantly flew out of the 3 mountain islands, their momentum surging. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. Beads of cold sweat dripped down his back. Deep in his heart, the feeling of being locked onto by a vicious beast had reached the extreme. Love, go small, say, Netku. It seemed that in the next moment, a terrifying power would come and crush him into powder. Even so, he still stood up straight and maintained a calm expression. Suddenly, the feeling of terror dissipated. Chinyu relaxed a little. As he looked at the several golden cores, there was a trace of pity in his eyes. Since he was fine, it was the other's turn to be unlucky. Bang! The water surface split open, and the black-armored, burly man strode over. Without saying a word, he punched out. The hollow nascent soul realm old man's eyes popped open, his face full of fear. Without any time to dodge, he exploded in the air. Broken bones and rotting flesh flew through the air, dyeing the water red before being washed away in the blink of an eye. The whale's sovereign was expressionless. His saber-like eyes swept around. Now, who else has any objections? Beside the hollow nascent soul old man, several golden cores paled and their legs shivered. Just now, if the range of the bombardment had been just a little bit larger, they would have all died together in the Yellow Springs. On the 3 mountain islands, the golden core sect that had risen up turned and left, not afraid of losing any face at all. Nascent soul, this was absolutely a nascent soul. In front of such a level of strength, you still wanted face? It would already be good if you could preserve your life. Whoosh! The last wave was torn apart, and the netherworld ship came to a stop. But at this time, no one dared to take a single step forwards. The whale's sovereign turned around. His black armor rubbed against each other, causing light cracking sounds to ring out. His eyes were as sharp as arrows shooting out from the heavens. Chinyu's face was a bit paler, but his body was still straight as before. He grabbed onto Princess Lushy's hand, not trembling in the least. A deep light flashed in the depths of his eyes. The whale's sovereign slowly said, "The sea monster races agree to your request. After we enter the netherworld sea region, we will allow the princess to leave. Otherwise, I swear that no matter where you flee to, I will find you and kill you." No one doubted the oath of a nascent soul powerhouse. Chinyu was no exception. "Senior, rest assured that I do not wish to end my life with the sea monster races." He stared at the whale's sovereign, motionless. The whale's sovereign turned around. "This matter is settled. I will leave first." Whoosh! A monstrous light flashed, and he broke through the skies. The 3 mountain islands were thrown into chaos. But no matter how restless they were, no one dared to disobey the will of the whale's sovereign. High Deep White's complexion was ugly. "Fellow Taoist Chin, please." Chin, you put away the 1,000 craft house. Light flashed around him. He grabbed onto Princess Lushy and flew towards the netherworld ship. The cultivators and sea monsters all had incomparably complex expressions. Ever since the netherworld ship appeared, this was the first time such a situation had occurred. Despicable villain, shameless to the extreme. Jealousy filled their hearts, and they cursed endlessly. But they couldn't stop Chinyu's figure at all. Ha! He landed on the netherworld ship. A cold aura rushed into his body from the deck. All the hairs on his back stood up, but immediately vanished from sight. It was like a mark had been left on a cultivator's body. Before Chinyu could think too much about it, the cold aura that hadn't yet dispersed from the netherworld ship began to rapidly gather, condensing into a thumb-sized bead in front of him. The bead was pure black and translucent, as if it were made from some sort of glass or jade. It clearly reflected a person's face. A fluctuation suddenly spread out from the storage ring, extremely weak. If Chinyu hadn't been on full alert, he wouldn't have been able to sense it. Surprise flashed in his eyes before he composed himself. Chinyu reached out and took the black bead in his hand. It was icy cold to the touch. On the 3 mountain islands, some cultivators who were determined to obtain it saw this, and their eyes turned red. High Deep White simply waved his hand and led the sea monsters away. Whoosh, whoosh, with the sound of breaking air, countless cultivators shot into the skies, rushing towards the netherworld ship. Although the benefits of being the first to board the ship were gone, the fact that there was a limited number of people on board didn't change. Even if they boarded, they might not be able to stay behind. But it was better to board first than a fight with others below the ship. Bang, bang! Violent fluctuations of strength erupted. A fierce battle had already begun. Moreover, it was rapidly spreading through the tide of cultivators at an astonishing speed. Chinyu stood on the deck, clearly seeing all of this. His complexion was calm, without the slightest ripple. Yes, he had boarded the Netherworld ship without any effort, but he had also paid a tremendous price. For instance, that black-armored sea monster, nascent soul powerhouse with an unfathomably deep aura. Although this person seemed carefree and relaxed, Chinyu didn't doubt that he was enraged to the extreme in his heart. If there was a chance, this sea monster nascent soul would definitely tear out his tendons and grind his bones to ashes. This was how the world was. There were gains and losses. A massive number of cultivators boarded the ship. Soon, the deck became crowded, but there wasn't a single person within 30 feet of Chinyu. It wasn't that everyone was afraid of him, but that no one wanted to approach him lest they provoke trouble. In his hands was the sea monster royal princess. If something were to happen to her, who would be able to bear the consequences? Chinyu was happy to have some peace and quiet. He sat down cross-legged. Of course, he had to hold onto the princess tightly. She was his protective talisman. The slaughter continued. On 3 mountain islands, the white-haired sword cultivator stepped forwards. His aura was thick and cold, sword intent crisscrossing his body. As long as anyone approached within 50 feet of him, they would be attacked by his sword intent. Wherever he passed, blood would splash out and severed limbs would fly everywhere. Countless cultivators cried out in pain and fear as they drew back. Lone Sword Island's white demon word. What a terrifying sword Dao cultivation. He hasn't even drawn his sword, but his sword intent is already crisscrossing. I fear he has already reached the heart-sword boundary. With his late golden core realm cultivation and the terrifying attacks of a sword cultivator, there are few beneath the nascent soul realm that are his match. White Demon's word stepped on the void, his eyes looking at Chinyu with undisguised killing intent. He coldly sneered, and the surrounding cultivators all retreated in panic. It looks like White Demon's word is very interested in the first-place reward. That surnamed Chin cultivator borrowed the strength of the sea monster races to board the ship first, but he has also made many enemies for himself. After entering the Netherworld Sea region, if he doesn't release the princess, the sea monsters will definitely kill him. But if he releases the princess, that will be enough for him to drink. There is a 90% chance that this surnamed Chin cultivator won't be able to return. Cultivators glanced at each other, quietly expressing their opinions. Chinyu suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at a pale-faced cultivator and lightly said, "If fellow Taoists can come back alive, I am sure we will meet again." The pale-faced cultivator's complexion changed. He revealed an awkward expression and turned to leave. Everyone else hurriedly shut their mouths, cursing their ears. They were so far away and their voices were so soft, yet they could still hear him. The air was filled with the scent of blood, and the surface of the sea was dyed red. As time passed, the sounds of slaughter gradually faded away. In 2 hours, at least several hundred cultivators had died where they stood. Of course, most of them were at the Foundation establishment realm. As long as Golden Core Masters didn't look for trouble, boarding the ship was simple. Chinyu was still the focus of everyone's gazes. From time to time, people would glance at him, most of them filled with hostility. Thus, he didn't notice that there were several gazes that seemed off. Chi Quan clenched his teeth. That bastard's life is so tough. Even though I framed him, he still managed to survive. DC monsters are really useless. Han Shanai frowned. Fellow Taoist Chi, be careful with your words. Chi Quan took a deep breath and nodded. Han Shanya's complexion relaxed a little. Fellow Taoist Chi, there's no need to worry. Although this plan wasn't able to kill him, I already have a plan in mind. After entering the Netherworld Sea region, this surnamed Chin cultivator will die without a doubt. Chi Quan's eyes brightened. Elder Han, are you speaking the truth? Han Shanai whispered several words in Chi Quan's ear. Chi Quan revealed a happy expression. He looked up at Qin Yu, a fierce smile on his face. If everything went smoothly, then even if this person who killed senior apprentice Sister Xiang had 3 heads and 6 arms, he would still be torn to pieces by the sea monster races. Whoosh! The netherworld ship began to move without warning. It tore through the waves and sailed into the fog. The cultivators on board were stunned for a moment before being overjoyed. No one thought that the netherworld ship would stop for such a short period of time. From start to finish, it had only been a little over 2 hours. Outside the ship, the cultivators that didn't have a chance to board were left panic-stricken. Many of them were injured and had been preparing to rest and recuperate before attacking, but who knew things would turn out like this. In a hurry, nearly 100 cultivators shot up into the skies, all of them attacking the cultivators they had chosen in order to seize a spot in the final moments. The cultivators that were attacked resisted with all their strength, not hoping to injure or kill their opponents. As long as they could last for a moment, these people would naturally retreat. There was a miserable cry from outside the ship. A cultivator wasn't paying attention and was suddenly covered by a mass of fog. It was like he had fallen into acid. His flesh and blood began to rapidly corrode, revealing his organs and bones. He struggled to escape, but even though he flew out of the range of the fog, the corrosion was still like maggots in his bones. Finally, he fell into the sea, splashing blood everywhere. The cultivators chasing the netherworld ship had no choice but to stop in fear. They looked on with unwillingness as the ship entered the range of the fog. Several breaths of time later, a sea breeze blew past, and the fog rapidly dissipated. The calm sea surface returned to its original state, with no trace of the netherworld ship to be seen. #######. My wife had a cesarean section in the afternoon. At noon, I hurried back to my hotel to write. I didn't have any intention of acting pitiful. After all, I liked this profession and it had given me sufficient rewards. I only hoped that every reader could understand the helplessness an author would feel at times and that they would do their best to acknowledge their work. Chapter 110. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The sound of the waves disappeared as the netherworld ship sailed through the mist. Or perhaps it was this strange mist that was carrying it forward. It was completely silent. Qin, you keenly sensed that more and more people were looking at him. The awe and fear in their eyes had greatly diminished, replaced by a burning heat. He wasn't unfamiliar with this sort of gaze. After thinking for a moment, he locked onto Princess Lushy. It was rumored that the women of the sea monster royal family were all born with a spirit-receiving body. As they cultivated, they would accumulate a massive amount of heaven and earth spiritual strength within their bodies. They couldn't use this spiritual energy themselves, but they could transfer it to their husbands after they got married and help their cultivation greatly increase. Now, it seemed that the rumor was true. Qin Yu's eyes flashed, and he composed himself. Even if there were people who coveted Princess Lushy, no one dared to do anything in front of everyone. Otherwise, once the news was leaked, what awaited him would be an extremely tragic end. Lying on the deck, Princess Lushy revealed her exquisite body. Her long eyelashes fluttered for a moment before she fell silent. After an unknown period of time, just as Qin Yu thought that someone couldn't hold themselves back any longer, the netherworld ship trembled and the sound of crashing waves came from within. They had arrived at the netherworld sea region. As expected, the mist quickly dispersed, and an unfamiliar region of the sea appeared before everyone's eyes. The sky was dark and overcast, giving off the oppressive feeling of a gloomy rainy day. The reflection of the sea's surface was almost black. The raging waves rolled and roared incessantly, and the wind howled in the air. Whoosh, whoosh, without warning, the moment the netherworld ship came to a stop, the cultivators on board burst out, including Qin Yu. At this moment, regardless of their cultivation level, they all used all their strength and burst forth with their fastest speed. The netherworld ship connected the netherworld sea region to the outside world. Every time it opened, It needed to collect a certain amount of sacrifices. The sacrifices were the cultivators who boarded the ship. Even though the offerings were chosen randomly, those who were left behind had a much higher chance of being chosen. With panicked screams, several cultivators were wrapped up in a blood-red light. They were the netherworld ship's choices. Within the blood-red light, they rapidly melted into flesh and blood that finally fused into the hull of the ship, becoming a part of it. Under normal circumstances, once the netherworld ship made its choice, it wouldn't target anyone else. However, there are always unexpected occurrences. Qin Yu's complexion darkened. He instinctively loathed the feeling of his soul being locked onto. Love go small, say, net kahum. A blood-red light appeared, covering him and Princess Lushy. He didn't know why, but his intuition told him that he was a fish in a pond that had been caught in the crossfire. But thinking about these things was meaningless at this time. Shui Guang clearly wouldn't care about his thoughts, and it was impossible for him to abandon Princess Lushy. Amidst countless gloating eyes, Qin Yu roared out loud. His aura rose like an invisible hand, forcefully breaking apart the blood-red light. The netherworld ship shivered. At this moment, Qin Yu's hair stood on end. He felt as if death had locked onto him. But in the next moment, this feeling vanished, as if it had never appeared. Fear appeared on the faces of countless cultivators. There had been people who had rejected the netherworld ship's sacrifice long ago. Each one of them was an absolute powerhouse, and their strength was terrifying to the extreme. It seemed that besides what Qin Yu had revealed, he was also hiding his strength. Sinister as expected, many of the cultivators cursed in their hearts, but they were secretly glad that they did not act rashly. Whoosh, whoosh, the cultivators on the ship dispersed, some in groups of 3 to 5, but most chose to travel alone. The Netherworld Sea region was incomparably dangerous, and the death rate was extremely high. Most of these people died from the hands of those who were hiding in the shadows. Although it seemed safe to travel with others, that wasn't necessarily true. Qin Yu lifted Princess Lushy and howled away. But at this time, a figure suddenly blocked his path. White hair and sword. It was White Demon Word. His eyes were wild, and his expression was icy cold. Fellow Taoist Qin, I hope that we do not meet again. A chill circulated in his voice. With a cry of a sword, this person rapidly flew away. Qin Yu was expressionless. With several flashes of his figure, he vanished from sight. A moment later, far away from the netherworld ship, Qin Yu was about to stop when he suddenly frowned. Countless blood threads erupted from Princess Lushy's hand, drilling into their bodies like living creatures. At some unknown time, she had opened her eyes. Her expression was cold and harsh, but there seemed to be a hint of relief in her eyes. Qin Yu's complexion darkened. Your Highness, I believe that you should give me a reasonable explanation for this matter. Princess Lushy clenched her teeth in hatred, but she didn't dare to say anything. The 1,000 threads unbound not. You should know that even if we cannot truly live and die together, it is simple for us to rise and fall together. If you dare to have any improper thoughts towards me, I will immediately commit suicide, and you will be severely wounded at the very least. Black lines covered Qin Yu's face. This sea monster royal woman seemed to think that he was far too tempting. He coldly said, Don't worry, I have no intentions towards the princess. Princess Lushy was startled. She was immediately enraged. What do you mean you have no intentions towards me? Do you think I am ugly? That damned human cultivator. Women were always unreasonable. As for the specific reason, one could refer to stories about beasts and beasts. Qin Yu let go and took a step back. I will keep my promise and allow the princess to leave. But I must remind the princess not to be caught by others. Princess Lushy coldly sneered. Are you afraid of being implicated? Shouldn't she be pleasantly surprised that she had been released? Indeed, it was impossible to guess the thoughts of women. Qin Yu was disinclined to speak with her. He turned and walked away. Princess Lushy stomped her feet in anger. You despicable human cultivator, wait for me to go back and gather some masters. We will capture you and bring you back to the royal palace so that I can take revenge on you. Whoosh! Princess Lushy fell into the sea. Several beams of monstrous light flashed, and she returned to her true form. She was actually a petite, single-horned flood dragon. Her jade scales shimmered in the black seawater. With a sweep of her tail, the flood dragon dove deep into the sea, rapidly departing. After Chinyu flew several hundred miles away, he had already set aside the matter of Princess Lushy. At this time, what blocked his path was a lobster monster. In truth, this was a giant lobster that had been magnified 100 times over. Its entire body was steaming with monstrous energy. Its scales were black, and its eyes flashed with a blood-red light. It was clear that its mind wasn't too bright. Seeing Chinyu, the lobster monster howled and broke through the water. Its thick pincers reached out, its blood-red eyes filled with excitement. It simply didn't say a single word before attacking. It was simple and crude. Indeed, the sea monsters of the Netherworld Sea region were all dangerous individuals. Chinyu flicked his sleeves, and the lobster monster was sent flying away. It exploded with a loud bang. Fierce fluctuations spread out from the storage bag. But this time, it was different from before. With a look of surprise, Chinyu flicked his sleeves. With a flash of light, 2 items appeared. One was the soul-burying flag that had been destroyed by the soul-burying arrow, and the other was the black short sword, the 100 Nether Sword. Whoosh! The 100 Nether Sword left its sheath on its own. It stabbed into the lobster monster's flesh and blood. A trace of black energy flowed into the sword, and the 100 Nether Sword cried out in excitement. As its master, Chinyu could feel its desire. After experiencing so many slaughters, the 100 Nether Sword had never responded. Could it be that the sea monsters of the Netherworld Sea region were different and could increase the strength of the 100 Nether Sword? This thought flashed through Chinyu's mind. He waved his hand and took back the 100 Nether Sword. He suppressed his thoughts and looked at the soul-burying flag first. He boarded the Netherworld ship. As the cold energy condensed into a bead, the soul-burying flag emitted a weak fluctuation. He turned his hand and took out the black bead. He probed it with his mind, but there was no response from the soul-burying flag. Chinyu thought for a moment, and then placed the bead on the soul-burying flag. After several breaths of time, something occurred that left him gratified. The surface of the bead began to melt away, slowly fusing into the soul-burying flag. Perhaps there was a chance that this destroyed treasure could be restored. But he didn't know whether or not Black Sky Demon was still inside. A moment later, the entire bead fused into the soul-burying flag. Although he didn't sense any changes, Chinyu believed that the insides were changing. He put away the soul-burying flag and grasped the 100 Nether Sword. After a moment of thought, his aura began to spread out. Since the Netherworld Sea region's sea monsters might contain the strength that the 100 Nether Sword needed to increase its strength, he naturally had to verify it. If it was true, reality proved that the sea monsters of the Netherworld Sea region had extremely sharp senses. Not long after Chinyu released his aura, a fish monster rushed out. This fish monster's body was flat, and its mouth was at its abdomen. Its mouth was filled with fierce and strange fangs. The monster energy around its body fluctuated. It was clearly a level stronger than the lobster monsters. The fish monster opened its mouth, but before it could even howl, a black light shot out. A layer of monster strength appeared around the fish monster's body. In front of this black light, the fish monster was as fragile as a bubble, instantly bursting apart. Puff! With the sound of a sharp blade piercing through flesh and blood, the 100 Nether Sword pierced through the fish monster's eye, directly piercing through its brain. This variation sea monster that was known for its potent vitality didn't even make a sound before it died. Chinyu's eyes brightened. When it came to killing the fish monster, it was the 100 Nether Sword that had acted on its own. As he carefully observed it, the scales on the fish monster's body began to dim. It was as if something within its body was being extracted and plundered. It was really useful. Whoosh! The sea surface broke apart, and a third sea monster rushed out. It carried a giant spiral shell on its back. It was a sea snail with astonishing defensive capabilities. However, beneath the 100 Nether Sword, its formidable defensive power wasn't able to display any effect at all. The sword followed the cracks in the spiral shell and stabbed into its body. Hum, hum. 3 sea monsters died. But the 100 nether swords seemed to have recovered some of its memories and began to hum with excitement. If it weren't for Chinyu calling it back, it would have continued to kill until the end of time. There was nothing he could do about it. He was hungry. If anyone were thrown into that barren land and buried for over 1,000 years, they would also end up like this. Chinyu grasped the unwilling 100 nether sword. His lips curved up as he stroked the blade. Don't worry, since you've come to this place, I'll naturally let you eat your fill. But these small shrimps are boring. Let's go eat a feast first. As if sensing its master's thoughts, the 100 nether sword hummed and settled down. Chinyu lifted his hand. A jade archive appeared in his palm. This was a sea map of the Netherworld Sea region that had been drawn up by the cultivators that had passed through it over the years. It wasn't comprehensive, but there were several important danger zones that were clearly marked. Originally, this sort of marking was meant to remind cultivators to stay as far away as possible. But now, whoosh, with a flash of light, Chinyu howled far away. Several hundred miles soon passed. Although the boundless sea region seemed unchanging, by comparing the currents to the black shadow in the distance and comparing it to the sea map in his hand, he was able to approximate his position and direction. He wouldn't go to the black shadow in the distance for now. He would first find a place to have the 100 nether sword eat its fill. An hour later, after cutting down 17 sea monsters, Chinyu came to a stop. In front of him, the sea surface was covered with whirlpools. The seawater roared as it rushed deep into the seabed. This place was called the 9 Nether Winding Paths. The seabed was covered with countless holes that extended in all directions. It was incomparably complex, and there were many powerful sea monsters of the Netherworld Sea region gathered here. If a cultivator entered, they would most likely die. Chinyu had no intention of entering. With a flick of his sleeves, he summoned the Thunder Magic Sword and thrust it into the sea. Chapter 111. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Purple lightning spread out. Although the power of the lightning had already weakened by the time it reached the bottom of the sea, it was still a great provocation to the sea monsters that lived there. It's already a miracle that we didn't cause trouble for outsiders like you. But you actually dared to come here and provoke us. You're courting death. Don't say anything else. Kill him. Whoosh, whoosh. The surface of the water suddenly burst open, and 2 strong sea demons jumped out of the water. They seemed to be close relatives, and both were some kind of pointy-headed fish. Its body was dozens of feet long, and its scales were thick and dense. Clearly, its defense was astonishing. Its tail, gills, and limbs were neither fish nor fowl. No matter how one looked at it, it looked like a hybrid between a human and a fish. Indeed, the high-level sea monsters of the Netherworld Sea region were all strange, mutated species. It was no wonder that they weren't recognized by the sea monster races and viewed each other with hostility. However, although it was a little strange, the aura of a Jindan could not be faked. The 2 fish demons were still very powerful. The 100 nether sword trembled, almost shedding tears of excitement. Master is a good person, bringing me to eat such a delicious meal. No, I'm so happy that I'm going to faint. Although the eyes of the 2 golden core fish monsters were filled with a blood-red light, it was clear that they had a bit of intelligence. As their eyes fell on Chinyu, they simultaneously revealed a look of vigilance. The monster race's perception of auras was far above that of human cultivators. Although Chinyu hadn't done anything and had restrained his aura, they still felt threatened. This was especially so when facing the 2 of them right now. He wasn't the slightest bit afraid, and his calm demeanor caused the fish to feel apprehensive. However, they had already come to their door, and they had also jumped out. If they turned around and left now, it would be too embarrassing. How could they continue to stay in this place? The 2 fish monsters were a bit regretful. As they were hesitating, the 100 nether sword made their choice for them. Whoosh! The scabbard was unsheathed and slashed down. Putting aside the power, just this aura alone was definitely full marks. But this time, the 100 Nether Sword had suffered. Although there were many Golden Core Realm fish monsters in the sea region, they were still absolutely powerhouses. How could it be so easy for you to cut it up like vegetables? As the demonic light erupted, the 100 Nether Sword was trapped within. It trembled and found it hard to break free. Bang! A column of water shot out. The 100 Nether Sword was bent and sent flying back. The two fish monsters revealed complacent expressions. With the two of us joining forces, it would be easy to deal with you. Although this cultivator hadn't attacked yet, his treasure had already been destroyed, so it didn't seem too difficult to deal with him. Then I'll get rid of him for dinner. But before the two of them could even sneer, the 100 Nether Sword flew back at an even faster speed. The blade of his sword was in perfect condition. There wasn't even a mark on it. It didn't look like it was damaged at all. Bang! The 100 Nether Sword slashed down. His aura was ferocious, as if he was roaring with his hands on his hips. I'll fight whoever stops me from eating. The corners of Qin Yu's lips twitched. You're going to eat me, and yet you don't allow me to resist? This overbearing, and shameless temper. I like it. However, if the 100 Nether Sword were to act on its own, it was unknown just how long it would take to wear down these two fish monsters. It was very likely that the fish demon sensed that something was amiss and fled. Qin Yu's feet stepped forwards. The air seemed to explode. Like a fierce tiger descending a mountain, he brazenly attacked. Bang! Bang! With a loud explosion, the two fish monsters were sent flying backwards. They cried out miserably and spat out blood. The 100 Nether Sword took advantage of this opening. Two black lights flashed, and the fish monster's pitiful cries came to an abrupt end. The 100 Nether Sword trembled in the air. A mass of black light covered it, and the sword blade cried out as it swallowed in great gulps. The narration was as follows. Woo woo woo. This is too blissful. I eat. I eat. I eat. I eat. I eat. I eat. As the 100 Nether Sword gorged itself, its face filled with intoxication as it absorbed the food, the sea monsters in the 9 Nether Winding Path were strangely enraged. Although Boss Fish and Second Brother Fish were just minor characters, for better or worse, they were still monsters from the 9 Nether boundary. If they were slaughtered so easily and cleanly, they would lose face. Revenge was out of the question, but this person and his sword could not be let go. Whoosh! The seawater parted and the giant crab broke through the surface. Its body was covered in an iron-gray carapace, and it waved its pincers. It opened its mouth and roared, its momentum fierce. The sea monsters sneered upon seeing this. Since the crab monster had attacked, the fate of this man and his sword was basically decided. Who didn't know that while the old crab monster wasn't the strongest, its defense and endurance were the most terrifying? But what happened next left the sea monster's jaws hanging open. After a moment of shock, they couldn't help but curse out loud. Qin Yu grabbed the 100 Nether Sword and turned to leave. Bang! Blood-red flames ignited. Like a meteor, he cut through the horizon and rapidly flew far away. This fellow, he didn't even fight and instead ran away. What a coward, he had no guts. The crab monster was a bit resentful, but he was even more smug. He coughed and looked around. Did you see that? That ruthless fellow that cut down Boss Fish and Second Brother Fish just ran away in fright when facing this old crab monster. What is dignity? What is momentum? What is subduing the enemy without a fight? Do you understand now? The crab monster waved its pincers in high spirits. Then, it turned and dove back into the sea. Qin Yu's face was gloomy. He had already stimulated the blood escape art to the limit. The 100 Nether Sword could feel the chill in its master's heart and obediently remained motionless. Love go little say, neck could just now. When the crab monster broke through the water, Qin Yu felt his heart skip a beat, as if a great calamity was about to befall him. This feeling was inexplicable, but it was also real and intense. It was like a blade had been placed on his body, ready to cut him down at any moment. In that instant, Qin Yu thought of Princess Lushy and the 1,000 thread Everknot she used. This woman, she actually hadn't broken the connection. Chinyu had an impulse to curse out loud. If something were to happen to Princess Lushy, then disregarding the anger of the sea monster races, he would immediately be severely wounded and on the verge of death. In a place like the Netherworld Sea region, to be reduced to such a state, how was that any different from dying? Chinyu clenched his teeth. The blood-red flames around him burned even more fiercely, and he sped up even more. Somewhere in the Netherworld Sea region, giant waves tumbled about. Deep rumbling sounds came from the bottom of the water. A battle was underway. Princess Lushy's original form was a flood dragon, and she was being besieged by 4 variation sea monsters. Although a flood dragon's body naturally possessed the ability to control seawater, she was far too young and her strength was lacking. Beneath the siege of 4 powerful sea monsters, she could only bitterly persist. In the periphery, several black-robed cultivators sneered. The spirit medicines that the Holy Lord bestowed upon you are truly fierce. They can even temporarily control variation sea monsters. If it weren't for them, wanting to capture that little girl wouldn't have been easy. This voice was familiar. It was the demonic path cultivator Han Shanai. He shook his head, a bit helpless. What a pity! A royal woman must have a perfect body in order to be used as a sacrifice. Otherwise, Chi Quan flattered, Elder Han. Once you capture the sea monster royal, you will definitely be able to help the Saint Furnace complete its awakening. At that time, the Saint Sun will reward you handsomely, and your cultivation will rise greatly. Han Shanai laughed. After this, I will make some arrangements. I will have the sea monster races blame the death of the princess on that surnamed Qin cultivator. At that time, even if he has 3 heads and 6 arms, he will still die in the sea region. Fellow Taoist Qi will have avenged Fairy Xiang. Qi Quan cupped his hands together. Thank you for Elder Han's brilliant plan. Han Shanai smiled in satisfaction. The Holy Lord had arranged this mission and sent 2 Saint Sons. This was because he valued the furnace as well as a test for the Saint Sun. He was a follower of the firmament Saint Sun. If he could help the Saint Sun win, then what could the present rewards be compared to his future prospects? This was the most important thing. A cold light flashed in Han Shanya's eyes. We've already delayed long enough. The little girl doesn't have much monster strength left. Control the 4 sea monsters and capture her no matter the cost. If this were a slaughter, then it would have been over long ago. But capturing someone alive was a technical task. Yes, Elder Han, a demonic path cultivator, took out a magical shell and blew into it. Sound waves spread out and the 4 controlled sea monsters immediately went berserk. Princess Lushy, who was struggling to support herself, was instantly surrounded by danger. Countless wounds appeared on her body, and the smell of flood dragon blood caused the 4 sea monsters to release their instinctive brutality. Their attacks became even more ferocious. A demonic path cultivator took out a bowl-shaped magic tool and absorbed the flood dragon blood that fused into the seawater. This was to prevent the smell of blood from spreading out and attracting other sea monsters. This robbery had clearly been premeditated. Not only could they capture a sea monster royal and use her as a top sacrifice, but they could also shift the blame onto Chinyu and force him to his death. More and more blood flowed out of Princess Lushy. Her body began to turn cold and weak. For the first time, fear appeared in her flood dragon eyes. In order to maintain the dignity of the royal family, no matter how afraid she was, she could maintain her calm and composure in front of others. But in terms of the flood dragon race's age, she was still a little girl in her teens. When death arrived, she would still feel fear. King Father, Queen Mother, Big Brother, where are you? Lushy is about to die. Hurry and save me. Tears flowed out, condensing into round pearls that fell into the dark seabed, as if foretelling her doomed fate. Inexplicably, the princess thought of Chinyu. This was all because of that despicable human cultivator. Otherwise, how could she have fallen to such a state? If I die, King Father and the others will definitely take revenge for me. And you can forget about living either. No, that's not right. The 1000th thread Everknot is still here. If I die, Even if he doesn't die, he will still lose 7 or 8 layers of skin. At that time, he will definitely be eaten up by the variation sea monsters. As she thought this, Princess Lushy didn't feel any guilt at all. Rather, she felt a bit gratified. That Cheen bastard deserved what he got. Suddenly, a fluctuation spread outwards. Flood dragons had an innately sharp perception toward water currents. Princess Lushy looked up with teary eyes. She saw a blood-red beam of light piercing through the seawater, rushing towards her at an astonishing speed. Her eyes widened. That was bang! A wild strength swept out. The 4 raging sea monsters were sent flying away. The demonic cultivators waiting on the periphery had incomparably ugly complexions just as they were about to achieve their goal. Where did this bastard come from? He actually dared to meddle in the matters of the demonic path? Was he tired of living? Han Shanye's eyes were icy cold. He was startled for a moment before he sneered again and again. It was this brat. Good, this was far too good. Chi Quan clenched his teeth. Elder Han, please attack and kill him. Han Shanai coldly waved his hand, and the 4 demonic cultivators rushed out. Of course they had to kill him. Otherwise, if news of them surrounding and killing a sea monster royal spread out, then even if they didn't have any evidence, they would still stir up trouble. The Holy Lord had repeatedly warned them that no matter what they did in private, they couldn't tear apart any pretense of cordiality with the sea monster races. However, with this Cheen fellow's sudden appearance, their plans would have to change. The human cultivators had gone mad, and Princess Lushy had decided to perish together with them in order to protect herself. This wasn't a bad idea. It was easier for the sea monster races to accept. Moreover, it was simpler and more feasible than the original plan. Chi Quan diabolically grinned. He snatched the conch and blew into it with all his strength, controlling the 4 sea monsters to rush towards Chinyu. Roar, roar! The 4 variant sea monsters roared out. Chinyu's expression was ice cold. He stepped forwards on his own initiative, drawing out the 100 nether sword and pouring magic power into it. The 100 nether sword excitedly cried out. A faint light began to shine on the black sword blade. The sea monster in front of him had countless tentacles. Just as it was about to wrap around Chinyu, a black light flashed and its body froze. Puff! A massive amount of black liquid sprayed out, causing the entire black water to instantly turn pitch black. Chinyu's hands didn't stop. The 100 nether sword thrust out, sinking into a large mouth that was biting at him. The sword blade pierced through the jaw and straight through the brain. He turned around, avoiding the sweeping claws. The 100 nether sword flew out of his hand, and there was a faint puff. The last sea monster forced his way to Chinyu's side, but what welcomed it was Chinyu's fist. The strength of the demon body was comparable to a hollow nascent soul realm cultivation. With the 2 superimposed together, the sea monster's hard head exploded like a ripe watermelon. And at this time, the 4 demonic cultivators had just arrived. As they looked at the black water in front of them, they hesitated. They didn't fear Chinyu, but were worried that they would be accidentally injured by the 4 rampaging sea monsters. Chapter 112. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Chi Quan activated his magic power to blow the conch. He stared at the blackened seawater, his eyes filled with violence and excitement. Kill, kill, kill. Tear him apart. At this moment, a light kacha sound came from his hand. Chi Quan's face stiffened, and he looked down in astonishment. When he saw a crack on the conch, his eyes went wide. Bang! The conch exploded, and countless fragments flew out, piercing Chi Quan's head and face. His 2 eyeballs were extremely unlucky, and they exploded on the spot. Ah! He screamed and rolled around in the sea. The few devil cultivators who had rushed out were startled. When they saw Quan Chi's miserable state, their faces paled. Whoosh! The seawater split apart, and Chinyu rapidly rushed out. Before the demonic cultivator could respond, he was sent flying away. The sound of bones breaking made one's scalp tingle. Without a single cough, he fell to the ground like a corpse. With a flick of his sleeve, a massive wave of seawater surged out like a sledgehammer, enveloping the other two devil cultivators. The two of them screamed as they were crushed. The last demonic cultivator turned to flee, but a black light flashed in front of him. He clutched his neck and spasmed a few times. As he spat out a large mouthful of blood, his body softly fell to the ground. Han Shanya's eyelids jumped up. He suddenly realized that he had greatly underestimated Qin Yu's strength. In just a few seconds, he had killed 4 mutant sea monsters, as well as 4 of his subordinates. One had to know that they were all golden core cultivators. Han Shanai didn't care about Quan Sheng, who was rolling about in pain. He turned around and fled. It was unknown what magic treasure he used, but his speed was astonishing. In the blink of an eye, he was far away. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. His fingers moved, and a talisman broke apart, turning into a beam of light that shot out. His gaze fell onto Quan Chi. As if sensing danger, Quan Chi took out the copper mirror and injected his magic power into it. He screamed, "I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you." Hum! The copper mirror shone brightly and shot out a beam of light. All the seawater that it passed through was evaporated into nothingness. Incomparably valiant. Unfortunately, the direction of the beam of light was still a good distance away from Qin Yu. With a flick of his sleeve, the water current swept Qi Quan away and ended his life. Then, he raised his hand and sucked the copper mirror into his hand. Sure enough, this bronze mirror was the one from the ancient cultivator's cave dwelling. This item should have been in Xiang Ruyu's hands, but after he killed her, he couldn't find it. Who would have thought that it would appear in the hands of this demonic cultivator? Feeling the resistance from the copper mirror, as well as the faint hostility, Qin Yu had a thoughtful look on his face. His thoughts raced, and in several breaths of time, he roughly understood what was happening. Sure enough, there was no such thing as love or hate without reason in this world. The reason why these devil cultivators had come looking for him was because of Xiang Ruyu. Thinking about it this way, the hostility from the sea demon race was most likely related to these demonic cultivators. The black seawater gradually scattered, revealing Princess Lushy's figure. She had returned to her human form, her face pale and her aura weak to the extreme. At this time, his eyes fell on Qin Yu. His lips moved, but he didn't say anything. Qin Yu frowned. He said in a low voice, "Your Highness, I've already allowed you to leave, so why haven't you undone the 1,000-thread, unending knot? If you were half a step late today, not only would you die, this Qin would also die." Princess Lushy's eyes widened. The guilt and gratefulness in her heart instantly vanished. She clenched her teeth in hatred. Sure enough, this surnamed Qin is a disgusting bastard. He only saved me because he didn't want to be implicated. She took a deep breath and coldly said, "I am injured. Protect me for several days. Don't worry, once I return I will explain everything clearly. The sea demon race will not make things difficult for you again and will even give you some compensation." Qin Yu thought for a moment and nodded. His complexion was still ugly. It had to be known that there was a limit to how long he could stay in the Netherworld Sea region. He still had many things he needed to do, so where did he have the time to waste? But leaving behind Princess Lushy clearly wasn't an option. This woman would definitely use the 1,000-thread, unending knot as an excuse. In addition to the potential threat of the sea demon race, Princess Lushy's teeth itched. If it weren't for you, would I have ended up in this situation? Bastard. But the princess had clearly forgotten that it was she who had been deceived by others and provoked Qin Yu first. Of course, this wasn't something the princess would think of. Even if she did, she would subconsciously ignore it. Qin Yu didn't bother with any nonsense. He grabbed Princess Lushy and rapidly flew away. Princess Lushy clenched her jaws. "Endure, endure, I will endure." After flying out 1,000 miles and dealing with several sea monsters along the way, Qin Yu dug out a cave dwelling on a reef at the seabed. Thankfully, the terrain of the Netherworld Sea region was complex. There were trenches that were hundreds of thousands of feet deep and immeasurably terrifying, and there were also towering mountains that were less than 100 meters from the sea. Otherwise, just the seawater alone would have crushed a person to death. So how could he have even thought of digging out a cave dwelling? Chinyu tossed down some pills and returned to his room. Love go small, say net. Chu Princess Lushy hesitated again and again. In the end, she took the pill and carefully examined it. Then, she clenched her teeth and swallowed it. Soon, her eyes brightened and the worry on her face scattered. She quickly closed her eyes and began to heal. At this time, Chinyu was holding the 100 nether sword, carefully sensing its changes. After this demonic treasure swallowed 6 golden core variant sea monsters. Besides the blade becoming a deeper color, there wasn't any other change to its surface. Chinyu carefully probed it. Its aura was only slightly stronger than before. But after killing 3 variant sea monsters, he could feel just how powerful it was. He stroked the scabbard, feeling the rough bumps and bumps. He thought for a long time, a thoughtful expression on his face. It seemed that although the 100 nether sword had recognized him as its master, it hadn't truly opened up to him. But that didn't matter. Since it had already recognized him as its master, there would be plenty of time in the future. One day, he would find out just what sort of treasure the 100 nether sword was. He placed it in his storage ring and took out another object. It was the copper mirror he had just obtained. Including this object, all of the harvest from the ancient cultivator's cave dwelling had fallen into Chinyu's hands. He hadn't painstakingly schemed against anyone, but the people who schemed against him had already died. It wasn't too big nor too small. It could be considered a taunt. Returning to the main topic, the copper mirror clearly rejected him. This was different from when a magic tool's master died, and its relationship with a magic tool was immediately dissolved. Chinyu wasn't startled or angry. Instead, he smiled. This was because this meant that the copper mirror was no longer a dead magic tool. Rather, it had its own simple judgment of likes and dislikes. In other words, it had its own consciousness. Spirit treasure. Chinyu carefully probed it. After a long time, he was overjoyed. This was because he discovered that this time, he might have obtained a harvest that surpassed his expectations. The copper mirror was a spirit treasure. However, it seemed to have suffered heavy losses a long time ago, causing its consciousness to be damaged and the vast majority of its strength to be sealed away. What remained might only be a tenth of its peak strength, or even less. A tenth, or even less of its strength, was able to display the might he had seen before. If it were restored to its peak, then perhaps even a nascent soul would have to retreat. Chinyu's smile widened. He tried to refine it, but he wasn't worried. This was a spirit treasure, so how could it be so easy to subdue? He would raise it first. Taking out several pills, Chinyu sat down cross-legged to refine them. Cultivation was like rowing a boat against the current. If he didn't advance, he would fall behind. The reason he had his current strength was because of the little blue lamp. But no one could erase Chinyu's own hard work and hard work. 5 days later, Princess Lushy walked out of her room. Chinyu responded and directly said, "Can we go now?" Princess Lushy lifted her snow-white neck and coldly nodded. Chinyu turned and walked away, his voice echoing out from afar. Unravel the 1,000-thread, unending knot. Before his voice fell, he was already far away. Princess Lushy finally couldn't maintain the cold arrogance on her face. She stomped her feet in anger. What a good surname, Chin. You really think I'm a burden? You're afraid I'll implicate you, but I'm the one who's afraid you'll implicate me. She angrily slapped her forehead. A mass of blood-red light appeared in front of her, with countless threads tangled together. Perhaps this was what the 1,000 threads unbroken was like. With a ruthless slap, the blood-red light shattered. Princess Lushy let out a sigh of relief. She stamped her feet and rushed out of the cave dwelling. In the distance, Chinyu could feel an invisible connection within his body sever. He knew that the 1,000 threads unbroken had been undone, and he relaxed a little. He really didn't want to be entangled with the sea monster races any longer. If everyone went their own way and didn't interfere with each other, then that would be for the best. Now that the troubles were over, it was time to get to work. Whoosh! Chinyu rapidly flew away. An hour later, the nine nether winding path. Repeating the same method from before, he summoned the thunder magic sword and thrust it into the sea. Purple lightning spread out. The crab monster was in the limelight. In particular, several sea monsters that were usually flirting with each other had brought it autumn spinach, making it feel even more comfortable inside and out. After the glory passed, it lazily lay down in its cave, sleeping. It didn't know what it was dreaming about, but it was so beautiful that it kept running up its nose. Purple lightning swept over. The crab monster quivered and was immediately enraged. Don't you know the prestige of this old crab? Where did this fool come from? Do you want to die? Sensing it, holy shit, it was actually that human cultivator from a few days ago. Good brat. When you saw this old crab's glory, you turned tail and ran away in fear. And now you still dare to come back? Hee, this old crab won't give you a chance to run away. Brat, just wait for your death. Magic power surged around Chinyu's body. He flew in the air, the 100 nether sword hanging at his side. As if it could feel the summons of a delicious meal, it was excited. Suddenly, seawater violently erupted, condensing into a giant column of water that came crashing down. The crab monster was hidden within. As the column of water rushed up, its two pincers slashed out. Prepare to die. Bang! The column of water shattered. The crab monster was startled. It thought that this brat had some skills. In the next moment, a boundless strength swept out. With a light cracking sound, the crab monster's pincers began to crack. It opened its mouth, but before it could even scream in pain, a black light howled out, drilling into its mouth. The crab monster's massive body froze in place. With a loud bang, the 100 nether sword flew out. Chinyu's lips twitched. He could clearly see that before the crab monster's eyes dimmed, there was a deep bitterness in them. It was clear that the crab monster found it hard to accept how it died. Bang! The crab monster smashed into the sea, stirring up massive waves. The sea monsters in the 9 nether winding path were stunned, unable to wrap their heads around what had just happened. What was the old crab doing? Why had it been defeated so quickly? Because of the column of water, they weren't able to see what had happened. But it was clear that the brat outside wasn't as simple as they imagined. He was absolutely a ruthless character. The sea monsters revealed looks of dread. Their eyes swiveled around, but none of them made a sound. The golden core variant sea monsters had already regained some of their sanity. Although their desire to kill was intense, none of them were willing to seek death. Suddenly, from deep within the 9 nether winding path, a divine sense fluctuation spread out. The eyes of the hesitant sea monsters brightened. Whoosh! The shark monster rushed out. It bit down on the crab monster's corpse, tearing it apart and swallowing it whole. Blood gushed out in all directions. Countless sea monsters gulped, but they were a step too late. They could only cry out in pity in their hearts. In the blink of an eye, the crab monster's corpse was cleanly eaten up. The monster energy around the shark monster had clearly become much more tyrannical. Without delay, it flicked its tail and howled out. Whoosh! The shark monster's 70 to 80-foot long body was exposed to the air. It opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of black water. Chapter 113. Genius 1 Second. Remember if you want to go. Speak, net, to provide you with wonderful novels to read. This black water was the poison that the shark monster had accumulated in its body after eating countless sea monsters for many years. It was a life-saving trump card, but it didn't feel any pain spitting it out. If it killed this cultivator and then ate him, perhaps its strength would rise to another level. What did losing a little venom count for? Many eager sea monsters curled their lips as they saw this. They cursed the old shark in their hearts for using such a powerful move. What do they have to do with it? What a pity for this boy. Otherwise, if he ate him, the taste would be amazing. As the sea monsters gulped, Chinyu allowed the venom to fall onto his body. From start to finish, he didn't move at all. Countless sea monsters were left dumbfounded. Brat, where did the nimbleness of killing that old crab just now go? Although we all know that you will definitely die under the old shark's hands, this is far too simple. The sea monsters that were a step too late and didn't have the chance to attack felt their intestines turn green with regret. Who would have thought that things would be so simple? The shark monster was startled for a moment before reacting. It was fully confident in its venom. Let alone a human cultivator. Even a sea monster with the strongest poison resistance would die without a doubt. It had to hurry. Otherwise, if the venom corroded away, there wouldn't even be a scrap of flesh left. What a pity. The shark monster rushed forwards, opening its mouth to swallow the corpse. It certainly had its own methods of dealing with its venom so that it wouldn't cause any harm to itself. Bang! A fist drilled out and heavily smashed into the shark monster's mouth, sending it spinning away. Its mouth was completely torn open, and it let out a blood-curdling woo-woo wail without being able to make a sound. Whoosh! The 100 nether swords seized this chance to attack, easily drawing out another drop of blood. It could be called the best killer. Hum! An invisible strength gushed out from the void, wrapping around the shark monster's corpse and pulling it to his side. Chinyu waved his hand, and the shark monster's corpse vanished, placed in his storage ring. He had no use for the corpse, but the shark monster's teeth were indeed treasures. In the past, the strange fish had used 108 teeth to refine the Stormflow magic tool that had forced back the 7 slaughtered demon sect master, Heavenstar Demon. There was simply no one else that could match its might. It wasn't easy for him to run into another qualified one, so he certainly couldn't miss out on it. As for why the shark monster's venom had no effect on him, he could only blame his bad luck. Although the Netherworld Sea region didn't distinguish between day and night, the little blue lamp was able to accurately sense the rotation of day and night. So now is the time for the Foot of Sea Blue Light. And under the protection of the Foot of Sea Blue Light, Chinyu possessed the world's most potent poison immunity. When he was wrapped in black venom, all he needed to do was take out the little blue lamp, and all of the poison would be extracted and condensed into his right index finger. The shark demon was dead. Love, go small, say, net cadet again. How did he die? The sea demons were dumbfounded. When Old Crab died, he didn't see it clearly. But this time, it was right in front of his eyes. The poison had already wrapped around this human cultivator, but he was still fine? Did the old shark's venom expire and deteriorate? All right, this joke was indeed too cold. But who could tell them what the F***CK was going on? Big fish, second fish, old crab, and old shark, for sea demons of the 9 underworlds had fallen at the hands of this human cultivator. This wasn't anything at all. If they were able to cultivate to the golden core level, which one of them hadn't eaten a cultivator or two? But the key point was that this matter was far too mysterious. Besides that black sword who had added the final blow, the other 4 had died in an inexplicable manner. The sea demons weren't stupid. Panic began to appear in their eyes. This cultivator was too strange. A deep roar echoed out from deep within the 9 underworld's winding path. It was cold and cruel, and the sea demons all revealed looks of fear. Whoosh, whoosh, 6 variant sea monsters broke through the water. Without a single word, they used all sorts of supernatural abilities. Water columns, venom, strong winds, and so on are all normal, but what the hell was this spitting fire? Come on, you are sea monsters, you are sea monsters. Bang! The blood escape art erupted. Chinyu dodged the attacks and approached the fire-spitting sea monster, sending it to its death with a single punch. Abnormalities were often strange, and strange things weren't easy to deal with. It was best to eliminate them first. This told them that there were no advantages to being strange or flashy. Being honest and low-key was the way of the king. Chinyu superimposed his strength with the blood escape art, as well as the 100 nether sword that could deal additional damage to the variant sea monsters. Although these 6 sea monsters were tyrannical, their fate had already been decided. Sea monsters fell into the sea one after another. Another variant sea monster that met the requirements of Stormflow was placed in a Chinyu's storage ring. A great harvest. Hum, hum, The 100 Nether Sword cried out in excitement, nearly fainting. As if sensing its urgency, another group of sea monsters drilled out from the 9 underworld's winding path. This time there were 10. Qin Yu revealed a dignified expression, but he still chose to take the initiative. He rushed out with the blood escape art. His demon body overbearingly swept out, and the 100 Nether Sword flew up and down, slaughtering everything in its path. Deep within the 9 underworld's winding path, in the nearly black seawater, a giant head appeared. Its single eye shined with a sharp light, as if it could pierce through the seawater and cover Qin Yu and the 100 Nether Sword. Its eyes were cloudy and uncertain, filled with hesitation. Bang! The last sea monster was cut down. The 100 Nether Sword tore through its flesh and blood and flew out. The sword body surged with black light, swaying back and forth as if it were drunk. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves and took it back. Then, he turned and left without hesitation. Using the blood escape art with all his might, he turned into a small dot on the horizon and vanished from sight. Deep within the 9 underworld's winding path, the giant head paused for a moment before emitting a deep roar of annoyance. But, faintly, it seemed to relax a bit. After flying far away, Qin Yu came to a stop. He looked back at the 9 underworld's winding path, his complexion dark and obscure. When he was cutting down the sea monsters just now, he had felt an extremely terrifying threat beneath that part of the sea. Qin Yu didn't know what it was, but since the 100 Nether Sword had swallowed enough sea monsters, he might as well leave to avoid any complications. Since the other party didn't chase after him, it should be because it didn't want to come into conflict with him. This result wasn't too bad. Whoosh! Qin Yu rapidly flew far away. In the Netherworld Sea region, there was a mass of clouds. It was unknown why it had condensed, but it was a bone-chilling cold that didn't disperse all year round. It covered a massive area of the sea. Inside, yin and yang were reversed, the 5 elements reversed, and ghosts filled the air like the yellow springs of hell. The dangers here were even higher than in the sea. Every time the Netherworld Sea region opened, there would be cultivators that entered and then stayed there forever. The scope of this fog was called the Netherworld Realm. It was rumored that the reason the Netherworld Sea existed was because of the Netherworld Realm. Everything that the demonic path had done in secret was here. Shwa! The light converged, revealing Qin Yu's figure. As he hurried along, he had consumed pills to restore himself. The 100 Nether Sword had fallen into a deep slumber, but this was clearly a good thing. Once it awoke, its strength would rise by leaps and bounds. Qin Yu looked up. In front of him was a mass of black clouds that seemed to condense in the darkness of the night. As if it had been frozen, it slowly surged about. This was the Netherworld Realm. Standing outside the black clouds, the temperature in the air had fallen by a great deal. His breath instantly condensed into countless tiny icicles. However, the surrounding sea surface wasn't affected by the cold at all. Waves still tumbled about, but the flow was a bit slower, as if it had become much thicker. Looking around and not sensing anything wrong, Qin Yu's figure flickered, and he flew into the Netherworld Realm. For a land covered in black clouds to be called the Netherworld Realm, it naturally had its differences. As he flew into the clouds, it was like he had entered a completely different world. As he probed with his divine sense, it was hard to distinguish between left and right, front and back. The seawater beneath his feet had turned a light red color. It was like diluted blood. Standing within was like standing in a sea of blood. Woo-woo. Wind blew against his face, the icy cold biting into his bones. This was the sound of the wind, but it was also the cries of departed souls. The sharp syllables were like countless needles, attacking the soul from every opening. If one soul was slightly weaker, they would suffer endless pain under this attack. They might even lose their will and be controlled by the departed souls. Qin Yu frowned for a moment before composing himself. He swept his eyes around and was just about to leave when he suddenly stopped. 2 shadows leapt up from underground, hurtling towards him. Before they approached, a cold aura rushed towards him, leaving his heart cold. Departed souls. From the outline of the two shadows, they were undoubtedly humanoid. Qin Yu didn't have time to consider why the departed souls in the Netherworld Sea region would be humanoid. He flicked his sleeves and summoned the thunder magic sword. Peepa, Peepa! Purple lightning spread out. The two departed souls smashed into the thunder. With a loud scream, they turned into smoke. The power of thunder was of the highest yang attribute. It was the natural nemesis of all yin and cold evil beings. Since Qin Yu dared to step into the Netherworld realm, he was naturally prepared. As if sensing the aura of the thunder magic sword, Qin Yu hurried along the way. None of the departed souls dared to attack him again. Even so, he could still occasionally feel the yin-cold aura of the departed souls. It was clear that although they were in awe, they hadn't given up. Qin Yu hurried along, carefully searching for traces of the demonic path. Although he seemed calm, he was actually on high alert. The Netherworld realm was infamous. He didn't believe that he could scare them away with just the Netherworld magic sword. 2 hours later, Qin Yu suddenly stopped. His icy cold eyes swept around. The Netherworld realm was extremely dark, but he could clearly see the faint fluctuations of the seawater in the distance. In addition to the faint traces of infernal energy, humph. To take the initiative, Qin Yu grabbed the thunder magic sword and thrust it into the sea. Magic power poured in, and purple lightning erupted. The surrounding 1,000 feet of sea region instantly turned into a sea of thunder. Roar, roar, with pained roars, sea monsters broke through the water. Their rotten bodies were covered in wounds, even revealing pitch-black bones. Sea corpse monsters. There were no living beings in the Netherworld realm. Sea monsters that entered by mistake would have their bodies taken over by the departed souls after they died, turning into these incomparably strong monsters that didn't fear death. They were departed soul puppets, and were also servants of high-level departed souls. If so many sea corpse monsters appeared here, then there must be high-level departed souls here. Qin Yu had a dignified expression. He pulled out the thunder magic sword and slashed down. The lightning turned into a saber that cut down on the nearest sea corpse monster. Its massive rotten body was soaked in corpse energy and was as hard as iron, but at this time it was easily cut in half like butter. The thunder saber didn't stop. It continued to cut down, cutting apart the corpses of 5 sea monsters before vanishing in the air. Magic power surged, his black robes fluttering in the wind. With the thunder magic sword in hand, Qin Yu was like a thunder god descending to the world, slaughtering to his heart's content. Besides their own stench, the terrifying sea corpse monsters couldn't even touch a corner of his clothes. Every sea corpse monster needed several years to slowly form. To a high-level departed soul, they were their most important wealth. Not only could they use them to fight enemies, but they could also protect themselves from being swallowed by others of their kind. This speed of loss clearly surpassed the expectations of the high-level departed soul. An angry roar sounded out. Chapter 114. Genius 1 Second. Remember if you want to go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Qin Yu stiffened. A large black hand appeared out of thin air and ruthlessly grasped at him. Bang! Purple lightning erupted. Qin Yu staggered away, barely managing to avoid the attack. He looked up with a pale face and then turned to flee. Shwa! A black figure appeared on the sea surface. It was over 10 feet tall and seemed solid. There was no other color in its black eyes. They were like 2 bottomless black holes, capable of swallowing a person's soul. It stared at Qin Yu as if it were locking onto a delicious prey. Its scarlet tongue licked its lips, and it opened its mouth to silently howl. A terrifying sound wave wildly vibrated at a high frequency. It was like countless spinning knives, tearing apart everything. Qin Yu cried out miserably as he fell into the sea. The sea corpse monsters swarmed over and fished him out of the sea. Although they were drooling over him, they didn't dare to move at all. Looking at the delicious flesh and blood in front of it and smelling the alluring scent, the high-level specter's eyes revealed naked greed. It couldn't wait any longer. It wanted to suck out his brain and swallow his soul. Then, this powerful mortal body that was filled with strength would become its own. It opened its great mouth, and a scarlet tongue drilled out like lightning. Shwa! Qin Yu's eyes flashed open, cold and sharp. In the next moment, the sky thunder bamboo arrived. Blinding purple lightning rose up from the sea, burning everything to ashes. The sea corpse monsters cried out miserably. The specter hiding within them turned into nothingness. The high-level specter wanted to flee, but after taking several steps, its body became smaller and smaller. After several breaths of time, the lightning converged. Qin Yu reached out a hand, and a translucent bead fell into his palm. There seemed to be tumbling clouds within it. Probing it, he could see an astonishing amount of pure soul strength contained within. Qin Yu had a strange expression. He never thought that after the high-level specter was purified by thunder, it would produce something like this. This bead could be directly refined and absorbed to enhance one's soul strength. It wasn't an exaggeration to call it a rare treasure. Should he take advantage of this chance to collect a few more? Once he left this place, he could refine them all, and the intensity of his soul would surely rise. But while dreams were plentiful, reality was far too cruel. Qin Yu had underestimated the sensitivity of the high-level specter towards danger in the netherworld realm. When he killed a high-level specter, he would be stained with its aura. Often, before Qin Yu could approach, the high-level specter would avoid him. Qin Yu thought about it for a moment and figured out what was going on. He was a bit disappointed. However, in this way, the incomparably dangerous nether realm had become a smooth road for him, and it could be considered an unexpected gain. Suppressing these thoughts, he focused all his attention on searching for traces of the demonic path cultivators. The truth was that at this time, Qin Yu was well aware that the netherworld realm was a separate space, and its interior was far larger than it appeared from the outside. In addition to the disorder of yin and yang and the five elements, it was very likely that after walking for a long time, one would end up walking in circles. One day, 2 days, Qin Yu revealed a happy expression. He lifted his palm, and a talisman appeared, sparkling with light. When Han Shan'ai was running for his life, in his panic, he didn't notice that a talisman mark had fallen onto his body. Unfortunately, Qin Yu's control over talismans wasn't strong enough. In addition, the distance was far, so it was difficult for him to accurately lock onto the location. But at this moment, the sensory talisman in his hand lit up, indicating that the other party was nearby. Qin Yu carefully probed. According to the brightness of the sensing talismans, he soon found the correct direction. The Tao of talismans was truly marvelous beyond words. Shwa! Qin Yu raced forwards. In the depths of the netherworld realm, there was a small island. It wasn't even a mile wide and was dark red all over, as if countless drops of blood had gathered and solidified. Slaughter energy lingered about it, shocking one's soul. This island was quite famous. It was called Blood Red Island, and it wandered through the netherworld realm. Today, on this island, black demonic energy tumbled endlessly. The runes of the array formation on the ground surged with a dark red light. From time to time, specters would fly onto the island, rushing in like moths to a flame. At the core of this array formation, a giant furnace stood tall. Blood-red veins appeared on its surface like the meridians of a human. They greedily wriggled about, sucking in all the specters that rushed in. The specters woke up at the last moment. They could feel the terrifying aura coming from the furnace. They struggled and screamed, but they couldn't change their final fate. The sea around the island froze, forming a thin layer of black ice. As long as someone stepped onto it, they would suffer a deadly poison attack. This was the furnace's strength spreading out. At the critical moment of its awakening, it instinctively protected itself. Every sea monster's aura withered as they were imprisoned. Their faces were deathly pale, and fear surged in their eyes. It was as if they had suffered a great fright. Outside the furnace array formation, 2 groups of cultivators were clearly separated. From time to time, their gazes met, cold and angry. But looking at their auras, they were undoubtedly demonic path cultivators. Han Shanai was among them, speaking in a low voice. In front of him was an arrogant demonic cultivator. He was ridiculously young, but his aura was tyrannical. He didn't speak, only frowning from time to time. A cold chill surged in the air, as if invisible blades were cutting at them. The demonic cultivators on the other side were clearly at a disadvantage. Whether it was morale, numbers, or strength, they were all suppressed. On the surface, the strongest was a 7th-level golden core cultivator, but his face was deathly pale. It was clear he had suffered heavy wounds. Beside him, a tall and sturdy figure was sitting cross-legged, revealing his broad and powerful back. It was impossible to see his face. One could only judge from his clothes and his steady and powerful heartbeat that he was a young man. The other demonic cultivators closely guarded the two of them. From time to time, they would look up with nervous expressions. It seemed that these two demonic cultivators didn't get along well with each other. The arrogant demonic cultivator looked up, his eyes sharp and bright, like an eagle looking down on the earth. Shan Wugu, Northgate Demon, is in critical condition because he tried to save you. Shouldn't you be looking for something to treat him? Northgate Demon hurriedly said, My injuries are fine. There is no need for Saint Sun Deep Blue to worry about me. He said in a low voice, anxiously, Saint Sun, don't fall for their trap. Shan Wugu lifted a hand, his voice calm and steady. Northgate, even if there is only a slight chance, I will still do everything in my power to save you. He raised his voice and said, Deep Blue, do you have any advice for me? Deep Blue said without expression, Leave this island and head 100 miles north. There is something that can save Northgate Demon. Shan Wugu stood up. Wind stirred up, revealing half his face, shrouded in shadows. Northgate Demon shouted out, Saint Sun, please reconsider. Shan Wugu smiled. Don't worry, I will return soon. Shua demonic light flashed. He rapidly flew far away, leaving the island in the blink of an eye. The demonic cultivators under his command all had red eyes, their faces full of admiration and gratitude. As they looked at the demonic cultivators across from them, there was even more hate in their eyes. Deep Blue's expression didn't change. A faint mocking light flashed in his eyes. Shan Wugu was indeed Shan Wugu. He was still skilled at winning over the hearts of others. But in this world, only the living could obtain the gratitude of others. As long as you die, these people will join me without hesitation. No one will shed a single tear for you. Deep Blue slowly said, Men, add fuel. Two demonic cultivators grabbed a sea monster. Ignoring its cries of fear, they tossed it into the range of the array formation. The sea monster's body melted like wax. It melted into meat paste that was injected into the array formation and absorbed by the furnace. The entire process only lasted for several breaths of time. But to the sea monsters, this was the cruelest torture in the world. They shivered, their eyes filled with hatred and resentment. Deep Blue was expressionless. The hatred of the weak was meaningless to him. Moreover, the more they acted this way, the better the effects would be. This time, the Saint Lord hadn't hesitated to consume his cultivation to open up a channel and send them into the Netherworld Sea. This was to borrow the strength of the dead souls here and use the sea folk as a sacrifice to awaken the slumbering Saint Furnace. Up until now, things had proceeded smoothly. In another 10 days, the Saint Furnace should awaken. At that time, that would be a great merit. Deep Blue suddenly frowned. He thought of something that dampened his mood. Han Shanai was extremely useless and had actually killed several of his subordinates. Humph, since he couldn't free himself, he might as well let this person go for now. The most urgent matter right now was to eliminate Shan Wugu. In the demonic path, a single Saint Sun was enough. Black clouds floated above his head, and he stepped on a sea of blood. As Chinyu walked forwards, his expression was grim, and the jade slip in his hand shined with light. He wasn't too far away. Suddenly, Chinyu's pupils shrank. He looked down at his feet. At some unknown time, A thin layer of ice had appeared on the sea of blood. It was as black as ink. Faint traces of icy coldness rose up from the black ice like needles, drilling into his body. This icy coldness contained an extremely terrifying destructive strength. It caused his blood to rapidly solidify and spread at an astonishing speed. Poison. Chinyu frowned for a moment before composing himself. If it were any other cultivator, they would be distressed by this black ice poison. They might even lose their life because of it. But to Chinyu, starting from a certain day, all poisons in this world had become meaningless to him. With a turn of his hand, a foot of blue light bloomed. The poison that drilled into his body was expelled by an invisible strength. It gathered in his limbs and bones, condensing into a black line that flowed into his right index finger. His fingertip became increasingly warm and smooth, as if it were made of jade. It shimmered with a faint halo of light. Chinyu looked up. As he looked at the black clouds and the specters that were constantly flying in, his eyes brightened. Without a doubt, the five-element spiritual objects that he had been searching for were right in front of him. But the more this was the case, the more he had to be careful. The demonic path must have made a massive amount of preparations for this secret mission. If he went any further, he would enter a tiger's den. Although Chinyu was confident in his own strength, that didn't mean he would act recklessly. If he could achieve his goal with the least amount of effort, that would be for the best. How should he attack? His thoughts raced. Chinyu's complexion changed. He took several steps to the side, avoiding the attack of demonic energy. He lifted his hand and punched out. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, two fists collided. A terrifying strength collided. Finger bones groaned, and a shaking strength swept out. Chinyu coughed and drew back. The attacker didn't think his reaction would be so sharp. He let out a surprised gasp, and a cautious look appeared in his eyes. The black ice on the sea surface was attacked by the two people's killing intent. Large tracts of ice splashed out in all directions. Shwa. Chinyu deflected the shaking strength and stopped. His body was bent like a taut bow, ready to erupt with a fatal attack in the next moment. He looked up, his icy cold eyes looking at the other side. But at this time he frowned. His eyes widened and his body stiffened. In a battle between masters, a single moment of weakness could change the outcome. This should have been the best chance to attack, but the other side also seemed shocked. The two of them looked at each other. It was only when the sound of breaking air reached them that they regained their composure. There was no time to speak. They could only glance at each other and suppress their tumbling thoughts. Shan Wugu turned and shouted, "There is no need to worry. This is a good friend of mine from long ago." Deep Blue's complexion darkened. He swept his eyes over Chinyu and coldly said, "Shan Wugu, you and I have always acted in secret. So how did your friend find this place? You must give me an explanation for this." Shan Wugu lightly said, "Meeting here is naturally a coincidence. What explanation does Saint Sun Deep Blue want?" Chapter 115. Genius 1 Second. Remember if you want to go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Deep Blue coldly sneered. Coincidence? Shan Wugu, do you think I will believe such an explanation? He roared out, Shan Wugu, how dare you? This matter is the order of the Saint Lord, and involves a great secret of the demonic path. Yet you dare to privately leak it out. If a mistake occurs because of this, then even 10,000 deaths cannot atone for your crimes. His eyes fell on Chinyu, thick lights swirling around him. What a good Shan Wugu! He had really underestimated his methods. He actually had the guts to play tricks on the Saint Furnace and seek outside help. Only a single person had come. Soldiers valued quality over quantity, so they were naturally used to deal with him. Thinking of this, Deep Blue's killing intent soared. Northgate Demon and the others were anxious. The Saint Sun had always acted in a safe and dependable manner. So how could he have made such a mistake and been caught red-handed by Saint Sun Deep Blue? This was bad. Shan Wugu was expressionless. There is no need for Saint Sun Deep Blue to worry. Since he is my friend, I will vouch for him. After rushing out of the island and arriving here, Han Shanai saw the face across from him. His complexion paled, and his pupils subconsciously shrank in fear. His first thought was, why was he here? Those that could cultivate to the golden core realm naturally weren't idiots. His thoughts raced as he thought. This person had followed him here. Han Shanai felt a bitter taste in his mouth. He absolutely could not let Saint Sun Deep Blue know of this matter. Otherwise, he would surely suffer a miserable fate. As he heard Shan Wugu vouch for him, his eyes brightened. He took a deep breath and pointed a finger at Xinyu. He angrily screamed, Saint Sun, this subordinate recognizes this person. He is the one who rescued the sea monster royal princess and killed 5 powerhouses of my demonic path. Deep Blue's eyes flashed. Elder Han, are you speaking the truth? Han Shanai roared out. This subordinate dares to guarantee it with his life. Saint Sun Deep Blue's eyes were like sabers. Shan Wugu, how do you explain this? Shan Wugu frowned. He had heard that Han Shanya's group had encountered powerful enemies and suffered disastrous casualties, but he never imagined that this was Qin Yu's doing. If so, things had become troublesome. Deep Blue lifted his hand. Demonic energy tumbled in his palm, condensing into a demon face that roared at Qin Yu. His lips curved up. Shan Wugu, I already suspected you to be a spy of the righteous path, but I never had any evidence. Now, I finally had a handle on him. This person is your friend. Can you explain where his righteous aura comes from? Shan Wugu fell silent. Deep Blue stepped forward, roiling demonic chi erupting from his body. His cold gaze swept over them. You people, do you still want to listen to the name of the righteous path spy? Han Shanai sneered and waved his hand. The demonic cultivators behind him spread out, forming an encirclement. Love, Gob Small, say, Nekahi was filled with excitement. If he could use this chance to eliminate Shan Wugu, then that would be a great merit to him. Northgate Demon and the others were enraged. Although they didn't believe this, they didn't know how to refute the current situation. Saint Sun Deep Blue's ability to discern demons was quite famous within the demonic path. Qin Yu's aura of righteousness couldn't be faked. Moreover, he had killed 5 devil cultivators. Under the bloody evidence, any form of rebuttal seemed powerless. Shan Wugu had already tacitly agreed. The hearts of his subordinates wavered. This was the perfect time to strike. Deep Blue's eyes flashed with killing intent. If he could eliminate Shan Wugu today, then even if he returned to the Total Faction headquarters, he wouldn't fear any investigation. Suddenly, a cold sneer echoed in the air. Compared to Deep Blue's wild and untamed demeanor, it was more of a cruel and ruthless killing intent. The surrounding space fell silent. Qin Yu's eyes were cold. Open your eyes wide and take a good look at just who I am. He took a step forwards. Bang! A wild aura broke out from his body. Infernal energy tumbled, and the smell of blood filled the air. The demon body revolved, causing his blood vitality to seethe. At this time, he was like a demon king that had emerged from hell. There wasn't even the slightest bit of the righteous aura from before. After being impacted by this infernal energy, the surrounding demonic cultivators cried out in alarm and drew backwards, fear in their eyes. This infernal energy was condensed from Qin Yu's endless slaughter. In addition, most of those that died under his hands were golden core level powerhouses. The strength of this infernal energy wasn't something that ordinary cultivators could resist. Northgate Demon and the others were filled with awe. Such a terrifying infernal energy, it was unknown just how many lives have been slaughtered in order to achieve this. A righteous path cultivator? Righteous path your grandma's legs. This was absolutely a hero of my demonic path. Shan Wugu looked deeply at him. He lightly said, Saint Sun Deep Blue, is there something else? Deep Blue's complexion was ugly. He coldly looked at him. Han Shanya's heart shook. He hurriedly said, Saint Sun, I swear that I am not lying. This surnamed Qin really did kill 5 of our masters. Qin Yu was expressionless. That's right, I killed them. He suddenly roared out loud, gnashing his teeth. You idiots, if it weren't for me interfering, that sea monster royal daughter would have already committed suicide. Do you really think you can suppress her and use her as a sacrifice? The Saint Lord ordered you to come here because he wants you to be careful. Once you force the sea monster royal daughter to die, the sea monster race will surely be enraged. At that time, even the Netherworld Sea region will not be able to withstand the anger of the sea monster race. If because of this, the Saint Lord's orders will be affected, it doesn't matter if you want to seek death, but it is impossible for you to drag us along with you. Han Shanai was shocked and angry. Suppressed by Qin Yu's aura, he didn't know what to say. Deep Blue cursed him inwardly for being trash. He coldly said, I don't care who you are, but it is a fact that you killed my demonic path cultivators. Shan Wugu, this person is your friend, so you should bear all responsibility. I believe that before we investigate this matter, it is not suitable for you to continue guarding the Saint Furnace. Shan Wugu's complexion darkened. Northgate Demon and the others were even more enraged. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He casually lifted his hand and twirled his fingers. Shan Wugu's eyes were cloudy and uncertain. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said, I will take out evidence as soon as possible to prove fellow Taoist Qin's innocence. Let's go. Qin Yu's eyes lit up with a smile. Northgate Demon and the others were unwilling. They clenched their teeth and followed. Whoosh, whoosh, the group quickly left. Han Shanai had an anxious expression. Saint Sun, how can we let this person go so easily? Deep Blue shouted out, Shut up. You recklessly attacked the sea monster royal daughter. Luckily you were interrupted. Otherwise both you and I would have been in deep trouble. He looked in the direction that Shan Wugu and the others left in, a dignified expression on his face. That cultivator, surnamed Qin, wasn't someone to be trifled with. If they really did tear apart all pretense of cordiality, they might not be able to take advantage of him. As long as he could expel Shan Wugu and unseal the Saint Furnace, all the credit would be his. That was enough. However, just in case, he had to make preparations to avoid any accidents. Men, continue to add fuel. Within 10 days, we must unseal the Saint Furnace. For a time, the panicked screams of the sea monsters on the blood-red island echoed through the skies. After leaving the island, Shan Wugu flew for some time. Then he stopped and flicked his sleeves, shooting out a beam of black light. The black light rapidly expanded, turning into a large ship. It was black all over, and its surface was no different from wood. But if one looked carefully, they would discover that this ship wasn't real, but was condensed from demonic energy. Shan Wugu led the group to land on the deck. He lightly said, Northgate, let's rest here for now. Northgate Demon hesitated. Shan Wugu smiled. Don't worry, things will soon take a turn for the better. He looked at Qin Yu and cupped his hands together. Fellow Taoist Qin, please. Pushing open the cabin, Shan Wugu flicked his sleeves. The ship's spells activated, isolating them from the outside world. The two glanced at each other and then hugged each other, slapping each other on the back. But in the next moment, they simultaneously pushed each other away, their faces full of disgust. Get the hell away from me, you damned freak. Don't ruin my reputation. The two of them laughed. After laughing for a long time, their stomachs ached and their eyes reddened. Qin took a deep breath. He clenched his teeth and roared, Potato, you bastard. You're actually still alive. I was sad for nothing. How do you plan on settling this matter? As Shan Wugu heard this, he revealed a look of reminiscence. After a moment of silence, he gently sighed. In truth, I never thought I would actually survive. Shan Wugu was the Lang Tu who had been harmed by Su Jian and thrown into the 100,000-foot abyss. The mysteries of the world were truly hard to predict. The brothers that had been separated in the past were reunited today. Qin Yu knew that Lang Tu must have experienced many things. He patted Lang Tu's shoulder and softly said, How about we brothers have a chat? All right. There was a round table and 2 chairs. Qin Yu and Lang Tu sat across from each other. There was wine in front of them, but no food. I was poisoned by Su Jian and knocked down a cliff. I thought I would die, but I never imagined that there would be a surging river below. Ha! The river was too cold, and it flowed too fast. I fell into the river and broke many of my bones, but I managed to preserve my little life. Perhaps it was because I drank too much of the river water, but I vomited and vomited, so the poison in my body eased a little and I didn't die in the icy cold water. When I woke up, it was a demonic path cultivator who saved me. As Lang Tu spoke to hear, his face twitched. His voice darkened, and he drank a mouthful of wine. Of course, he didn't save me out of kindness. It was just that he was missing a suitable medicine man. Lang Tu paused for several breaths of time and then grinned. In short, there were many things that happened, but I don't want to experience them again. You know that I survived, and I lived a very good life. My cultivation rose by leaps and bounds. After that, I coincidentally joined the demonic path. You know that my talent isn't good, so I had no choice but to walk the stupid path of body transformation. But I never thought that the demonic path would have a cultivation method that was especially suitable for me. It was because of this that I was chosen by the demonic path Holy Lord and became the so-called demonic path Saint Son. But, as you can see, my title of Saint Son is quite exaggerated. If I'm not mistaken, I'm basically just a role to accompany the Crown Prince in his studies. There were many things that Lang Tu didn't want to remember, and there were also some things that he didn't want to say. Qin, you could understand this, but he always felt that there was a barrier between the two of them. It was impossible for them to return to the way they were in the past. Perhaps this was the power of time. But as he thought of the little blue lamp, some of his emotions faded away. He laughed at himself. Didn't he also have some secrets that he couldn't speak of? People changed. Potato, that is all in the past. Being able to live is already a stroke of good fortune. Lang Tu nodded and laughed. I have no complaints. Compared to death, everything I experienced isn't anything at all. His eyes brightened. What about you, Taro? Just how much time has passed, and you've reached your current cultivation? If you say that you didn't have any lucky chances, I don't believe you. Chinyu smiled. He recounted the events of these past years. Although he carefully embellished his story, he couldn't help but cover up some traces. Lang Tu laughed. I was originally feeling a bit guilty for deceiving my best friend in the world, but now I feel much better. He waved his hand and said, No need to explain, no need to explain. It's fine as long as we understand each other. Chinyu bitterly smiled and nodded. Chapter 116. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The two of them fell silent at the same time. Perhaps they both felt some changes in each other. Love go small, say, Netku after a long time. Lang Tu smiled and broke the silence. He said in a relaxed tone, Taro, in order to avoid trouble, don't call me Lang Tu anymore. My current name is Shan Wugu. On his simple and honest face, there was a faint indifference. Lang Tu, after that day, he died. Shan Wugu, Shan Wugu. Did he fall off the cliff, and not even his bones remained? With such a name, one could imagine the resentment in his heart. Chinyu calmly nodded. Good. However, I've already killed and poisoned Su Jian and the others. Shan Wugu punched him. So it was you. The demonic path had wantonly invaded the southern empire, and the eastern mountain sect had been razed to the ground. He had secretly investigated and found out that Su Jian had died an inexplicable death, but he didn't know that Qin had taken revenge for him. Shan Wugu smiled, feeling a bit moved in his heart. He chatted with Qin for a bit longer before getting down to business. Qin, why are you reminding me to withdraw? Just what is your plan? Qin smiled. Luckily, you're smart enough to see through my warning. I really don't want you to protect the Saint Furnace anymore, because the reason I rushed to the sea region was because of it. His eyes were earnest. Potato, I'll only call you by your nickname. That should be fine. Let me ask you, what is your mission for entering the sea region? Shan Wugu hesitated for a moment. He said, Unseal the Saint Furnace. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Do we need to use 5-element spiritual objects here? Shan Wugu's eyebrows arched up, as if he were extremely surprised. Qin Yu clapped his hands. That's great. Potato and the 5 elemental spiritual objects are my targets. Shan Wugu frowned. He was obviously in a difficult position. Qin Yu waved his hand. Listen to me. He pondered for a moment, and after confirming that there weren't too many flaws in the plan he came up with in a hurry, he began to explain in a low voice. Shan Wugu's eyes slowly brightened. Finally, after some hesitation, he nodded and said, All right, I believe you. Then let's make a bet. Qin Yu hesitated. Potato, my only worry is that this matter will implicate you. Shan Wugu's heart warmed. Don't worry. Something happened to the Saint Furnace, and it is inevitable that it will be punished. But I've already escaped, and in addition to the repairs I made afterwards, it shouldn't be fatal. Moreover, compared to the expected benefits, these risks were nothing. If I'm lucky, my role as the Crown Prince's study companion might be able to reach a higher level. As he spoke, he winked. Moreover, I feel that your gains this time might far exceed your expectations. Love go small, say, Netku Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Are you saying? Shan Wugu blinked his eyes. Guess. Seeing Qin Yu's annoyed expression, he laughed out loud. Qin Yu, oh Qin Yu, your luck is truly good. The Saint Lord spent countless methods to gather the power of the 5 elements, but now it seems that there is a high chance that it will belong to you. Qin Yu was overjoyed. The 5 element spiritual objects were actually complete. 5 element spiritual objects. This wasn't recorded in the Jade Slip. It only mentioned that the demonic path's secret actions were related to the 5 element sacred objects. He originally thought that obtaining 2 of these spiritual objects was already a great stroke of luck, but this far exceeded his expectations. It was simply breaking through the heavens. One person wanted the Saint Furnace, and the other wanted the 5 element spiritual objects. This could be called a happy ending. The 2 of them were prepared to pull out a tooth from Tiger's mouth, so they began to conspire. The original plan had been changed beyond recognition. In the end, both sides were satisfied with the result. After careful deliberation, for hours had passed. Qin Yu, the Saint Furnace has formidable defenses. Even if you break through the surrounding array formations, it isn't something that a golden core cultivator can deal with. Are you really confident you can handle it? Shan Wugu frowned. Qin Yu smiled. Just act according to the plan. I have my own methods. Shan Wugu stood up. All right, I will immediately make arrangements. You can go into seclusion here. His expression was firm and resolute. He strode out, clearly erasing all unnecessary thoughts from his mind. Since he had decided to go all out, he would do it with everything he had. Qin Yu lifted his hand. Several array discs fell down, sealing in the cabin's aura. It wasn't that he didn't trust Shan Wugu, but that this involved the 5 element spiritual objects. He had to be careful. With a flick of his sleeve, there was a flash of light, and the corpse of the shark demon appeared on the ground. With his current cultivation, he didn't need to dismember the mad demon anymore. He used his mind to control the magic treasure and pulled out all its teeth. Counting them, there were 312 of them. Time was of the essence, so there was no need to say anything else. Begin. As for the Saint Furnace protection that Shan Wugu spoke of, Qin Yu indeed didn't have the strength to break through it. But this didn't stop him from having enough confidence in himself. Storm Flow, the demonic path refining method that Yu Qi had left him in the past, was extremely crude and effective. Unfortunately, it was a one-time transaction, and the consumption of materials was terrifying. The average person simply couldn't afford it. Love, go small, say, Netku, even putting aside the materials besides Qin Yu, who had the golden title of a demon body cultivator who could release so much blood essence at once. Stormflow was not something that just anyone could afford to play. 10 hours later, 93 shark demon teeth were refined. Qin Yu's face was pale. He stopped for the time being and swallowed a pill to restore himself. Shan Wugu returned to the deck and ordered that no one was to disturb Qin Yu. Then, he picked out several trusted aides and hurried away. The demonic cultivators under him looked at the Saint Sun's back, all of them dispirited. Although they didn't know what use the Saint Furnace had, it was an indisputable fact that the Saint Lord valued it. Now that Shan Wugu had been expelled by Deep Blue and all the credit had been taken away, his status in the total faction headquarters will become even more awkward in the future. With a sigh, the demonic cultivators scattered. No one noticed that in the eyes of one of them, there was a hint of pride hidden beneath the worry and anxiety. He looked up in the direction that Shan Wugu and the others left in, a thoughtful expression on his face. A moment later, with an angry roar, there was a loud bang and a figure was sent flying away. Demonic light wildly surged around his body. It was clear that he had a treasure protecting him. Even so, blood gushed out from his nose and mouth, and a stabbing pain came from his chest. It was unknown just how many bones had been broken. With a scream, this person turned and fled, diving into the black clouds. Shan Wugu was enraged. Capture him at all costs. Whoosh, whoosh, the demonic cultivator shot into the skies. Shadethorn Demon paled, his face filled with fear. He never thought that, even with a demonic treasure to hide, he would still be discovered. Thinking about it, Shan Wugu's guard had been raised because of the leak last time. He had been too careless. The pain in his chest became increasingly heavy. Every breath he took brought with it a burning smell of blood, and the circulation of demonic energy in his body stagnated. Behind him, there was an endless aura. It was clear that someone was chasing him. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before he was overtaken. Suddenly, Shadethorn Demon's complexion changed, and he came to a stop. In front of him, a figure stepped out of the fog. Shadethorn Demon recognized him. He was an early Golden Core demonic cultivator that Shan Wugu had subdued not too long ago. Wordwind Demon. That's right, this person's strength was sloppy and ordinary. His only advantage was his speed. Not too long ago, Shadethorn Demon had secretly mocked this person for being a useless decoration. He never imagined that he would be blocked today. Shadethorn Demon took a deep breath. He suppressed the tumbling blood in his body and lifted a hand to attack. Wait! Wordwind Demon waved his hands again and again. His thin and old face was filled with panic. Fellow Taoist Su, I have come to save you. Su Yuan was Shadethorn Demon's alias. His eyes flashed. Wordwind Demon, what is the meaning of this? Wordwind Demon smiled. Shan Wugu's defeat has already been decided. I have thoughts of joining Saint Sun Deep Blue, so I asked fellow Taoist Su to recommend me. Shadethorn Demon relaxed a little. Wordwind Demon hadn't been a subordinate of Shan Wugu for too long. In the current situation, it was normal for him to have thoughts of betrayal. Although Shadethorn Demon despised Wordwind Demon's actions in his heart, he still revealed a friendly smile. Saint Sun Deep Blue is desperate for talent. As long as you can bring me away from here, I will definitely recommend you. Wordwind Demon was overjoyed. Good, I will bring you away now. He flicked his sleeves, and demonic energy wrapped around Shadethorn Demon. The two of them were like shadows, quietly fusing into the black clouds and rapidly flying away. Shadethorn Demon turned his head, his face cold. Shan Wugu, I fear you never imagined that the person you sent to kill me would actually save me. Although he had suffered heavy injuries this time, the information he had obtained was extremely important. After reporting this to Saint Sun Deep Blue, he would surely be rewarded. Thinking of this, a smile lit up his pale face. His eyes fell on Wordwind Demon's back, filled with mockery. Who would dare to use someone who had betrayed their master? Perhaps it wouldn't be long before Saint Sun Deep Blue found some excuse to use him as cannon fodder. However, Shadethorn Demon didn't discover that Wordwind Demon's back was facing him. His old and thin face was no longer filled with flattery, replaced with indifference. In the clouds, Shan Wugu, Northgate Demon, and several of his trusted subordinates stood high in the air. Northgate, isn't it a bit too excessive for me to do this? Northgate Demon cupped his hands together. Saint Sun, there is no need to think too much. This is something Wordwind Demon did voluntarily. You promised to take revenge for him. so I'm sure he is extremely happy in his heart. Shan Wugu took a deep breath. Whirlwind Demon left behind a child. When I return, I will bring him to the Total Faction headquarters. I will compensate him for all of Whirlwind Demon's merits. Saint Sun is benevolent. The demonic cultivators bowed. This easily caused Shan Wugu's subordinates to acknowledge him even more. His expression was solemn. Although he still had a simple and honest face, he no longer had the heart of the past. Let's go. This is only the first step. We still have many things to do. Whoosh, whoosh, the group rapidly flew away. Netherworld Realm, Blood Red Island. With Shadethorn Demon leading the way, the two soon arrived. Whirlwind Demon was being watched over. He landed at the edge of the island, his expression nervous and his wretched face full of smiles. Deep Blue swept his eyes over him and frowned. He saved you? Shadethorn Demon respectfully said, yes. If it weren't for this person, I fear I wouldn't have been able to return. Deep Blue sneered. What a good Shadethorn Demon. To think you would be so stupid. You were used by others to bring back a spy, and you still don't know anything. He shouted out loud, men, capture him. Whirlwind Demon's complexion rapidly paled. He screamed out, Saint Sun, forgive me, forgive me. He turned and begged for help. Fellow Taoists, sue, save me, save me. Shadethorn Demon lowered his head, not saying a word. Deep Blue lowered his head, his sharp eyes staring at Whirlwind Demon. Speak, just what sort of trick does Shan Wugu have up his sleeve? Whirlwind Demon kowtowed again and again. Saint Sun, please forgive me. I only didn't want to accompany Shan Wugu to his death, so I saved fellow Taoist Su and asked him to introduce me to you. Saint Sun, please understand that everything I say is the truth, and I don't dare to lie to you. His thighs trembled and a pungent smell wafted out. The surrounding demonic cultivators widened their eyes, and then their faces filled with contempt. The world was vast, and there were truly all sorts of strange things. Some people used peeing themselves in fear, but a solemn golden core cultivator had actually peed himself in fear. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.